Hello, friends. We have a lot to cover today. We're going to try a new format. We're going to be covering the nursing strike. We're going to be covering Damar Hamlin getting discharged from the hospital. A nurse practitioner got fired from CVS because she was claiming she had a religious exemption from trying to treat certain things. And they said no. And what else is on our list? We have a list. Oh, the Moderna vaccine is getting bonkers expensive, even though they didn't really pay to develop it. So we'll talk about all of those things. And we're introducing a new segment called Pallet Cleanser, where we bring a ridiculous story and we can discuss that. If you are a channel member, you too can ask for a palate cleanser. Okay. This is it's a big day. We're going to welcome the soap. Okay. If you need a palate cleanser, if you're like, this is getting too dark and too serious, you can request a palate cleanser. If you're a channel member, then you have that emoji. If not, you can just write it with words, but emojis are more fun. I have my lovely team of humans here with me today. All the humans. We have a lot of humans. Welcome all the humans. We're going to be discussing all the things. They might not know that yet. Sometimes I spring things on them last minute. We're going to be covering all the topics. We're just going to go through them, see what we have to say about each one. I thought this would kind of be, in my mind, what happened in healthcare, healthcare headlines this week. And then other things will be for more of a deep dive. So this is going to be a little bit more surface level. Let me know what you think in the comments. We're trying new things. We'll see if we actually, if we like it, and we'll go from there. Everyone here has all their social medias in the description below. They talk on the internet about super wonderful things, and some of them are more opinionated than others. You'll figure it out. It's a great time. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Does anyone have anything to say before we start rapid firing through these? We're not going to go that fast. If you've been here, you know I can get through no topic quickly. It's fine. It's a personality feature.
Happy Friday the 13th to everybody.
Oh, is it Friday the 13th?
Oh.
Where are we in the moon?
We're doomed.
Where are we with the moon cycle?
It's a waning moon, thank goodness.
Because if you've ever worked in healthcare, Friday the 13th with the full moon, it happens all the time for some reason, and it's horrifying. That is the first time one of my patients ever went into the ceiling was on Friday the 13th, and I was just like, this is happening.
Okay, I have to ask, is that a literal or a metaphor?
Oh, no, that's literal. I worked med surg, so my patients went into the ceiling all the time.
Okay.
It just popped up the little roof tile, and you were like, boop, and you're like, dang it. That's why all the ICU people, they're like, sedation. We enjoy sedation. In the emergency room, did your patients go up into the roof, Scott?
No, they did not.
Oh,
they went out the front door sometimes. I had to run after them.
Yeah, we locked the windows. So we really did it to ourselves. We trapped them in there. We were like, no, you can't leave. Roof, only option.
We actually had a very unusual situation at our sister hospital that was, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say it here, but it was not a good situation. There apparently was a very large space between the two floors in the attached rehab kind of long-term care unit to the hospital that was built separately. And then there was a walkway connecting it. And somebody was found up there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a former employee.
Talk about creepy.
That is creepy.
It was, yeah. I have to say though, I always, as a union organizer, we always, have privy to the layout of buildings a little bit more than maybe the average person. And many of us kind of wondered, someday somebody's going to get up there in that weird space and they're not going to know.
Is it even a hospital if you don't have that creepy old building where they're like, we don't use that anymore? And it's just
even
over
new
there.
Buildings are creepy.
Yeah.
Even new ones.
And we had
one section where it's nobody goes down there.
And the elevators are just open and the elevator shaft is wide open. And you're just kind of they're like, we don't really go over there. And you're like,
where do you people work?
Right. In my hospital,
California,
actually,
maybe they don't have this problem. Okay.
No, in my hospital, they had they had two double elevator areas, and one was ER going up to surgery, but there was only actually one elevator, but there was the whole opening for a second elevator. And apparently the company just, when they built the hospital, and it wasn't that old, they just decided we didn't have enough money and they never built an elevator there. And that was another freaky area that, 4 flights, just a big giant hole.
Yep.
Strange.
And that's where ours was, where we would send people when you were brand new to go like get your ID badge and like all these other things, was in the basement of that building. So you had to like walk by, you're like walking, you're like, oh, where do I work?
There's radiology. This is the morgue.
Exactly. You're like, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was like the hospital's way of hazing people. They were like, if you make it through this experience, if you come back after seeing that building, you're fine.
If you survive the
gonna
trip
do
down
fine.
to get your ID badge, you're in.
Exactly. You're going to be
Yes.
like totally fine.
Right.
Totally fine. AdChem
Many
has
times
excellent
people-
advice.
IVU.
No, go
What's
for it.
IVU? What's IVU? Oh no, we had a lot of security guards quit because at night they were the ones that had to bring patients who had deceased to the morgue, and we had trouble getting security guards. They often would quit. I mean, we'd hear it all the time. We're like, oh, okay, they hired 2 people. Oh, we're like, where'd they go? They left. They left.
They
like,
left.
At the minute they heard that they had to do that job at night.
They were like, nope. So then it's the nurse's
Like-
job. We had to transport all of our own patients to the morgue.
Oh no.
Yeah. That seemed normal to me until I met the rest of the world. And I was like, that's not what, oh, okay. That's not what you do. While the ER is calling you for a report on your next patient while you're like on the way down there. Anyway, there's no hard feelings. Everything's fine. Do as AdChem says and say, if you're a good nurse, you'll check for the Friday the 13th with the full moon and request it off before all your coworkers. Do that. So you don't find people in the ceiling because it's
Like
not
a
a good
year in
time.
advance, like way in advance.
Exactly. It's not a good time. I don't recommend it. It's
Just
not.
put that in your contract. It's like, okay, I get this much money, this many days off, and I get every Friday the 13th off.
I will not be participating. Please and thank you. No, thank you. Chelsea said the first time I went to Barnes in Salt Lake City, I accidentally got off on the wrong floor and the floor was deserted. That's very creepy. That's very
St.
creepy.
Louis. That's my
Oh.
old stomping grounds. Yeah.
Oh, St. Louis. Well, there we go. I don't even know what I said. It's fine.
Yeah, Barnes is a huge hospital that they kept building on to, and now it's part of an even bigger complex, Barnes Jewish, Christian, whatever. But yeah, some of those floors they would close and just there would be nothing there.
I don't like it. I don't like
was
it.
a
We also
huge
had,
hospital.
did your
What a
hospitals
great-
have the floors that didn't exist or like they were there, but you could not access them? Like on the elevators and they were just like in between and you were like, what happens there? And everyone's like, we don't talk about it. And you're like, okay.
That's a great sign.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. We don't talk about that floor.
Secret government
No.
experiments.
Exactly. They're like, you don't need to worry about it. Okay. Well, first story, very different direction. Everyone's probably heard about this. We had our nurses strike this week. Not we. I was not involved with it at all. But I am proud of them. They were able to, it ended, and they got a pretty sweet negotiation out of the entire thing. I don't know if you guys were following this. Adrian and I had done a video on it like a week and a half ago before it happened, and then it happened, and I've done a few updating you. Pretty much as soon as I put them out, it would be something totally like they updated, and I was like, well, that video was useless, but it's done now. Montefiore has their contract out, and here I'll pull up the important parts for it. So in case you weren't aware, basically the too long didn't read. New York City had initially 8 hospitals that were going to go on strike. It got cut back way down to 3. But they went on strike for like 3 days asking for not money. They wanted better patient ratios because they were like, there's too many patients per nurse and everyone's dying. And the hospital just kept being like, hey, no, we just want to offer you more money. We don't want to give you what you want, which is the ratios. And eventually they caved because they weren't very well prepared for this whole thing, the hospital, and things were not going well. So they did cave, and the nurses actually did get what they want. I'm sure Adrian can tell us a little bit more, but they got a contract that actually wasn't, I mean, on the surface, it doesn't look too bad. Oh, sorry. If we didn't mean to block your face, Mel and Matt. This was kind of like the highlight of it was, this is at Montefiore. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. Everyone always, they're like, how do you not? I'm so sorry. I'm not from here. They got safer staffing ratios where they gave them basically, I think the hospital can get like fined if they don't do it, what they were wanting them to do, which is precedent setting, as it says in yellow. This is hopefully going to be something that other hospitals will now use now that they have this in place. Right now, other hospitals are going to be able to be like, well, I want what they have, so we're going to just go on strike when their contract's up. If not, at least that's how I imagine it going. And the ratios they gave them was 1 to 2 for critical care. So one nurse for 2 patients, 1 to 5 for acute, which is like med surge, 1 to 8 for subacute. I don't know what the ER was. I don't know if they said that, if they would count that. I can't imagine they would give you 1 to 2 in a general ER, but that's pretty good. That's pretty much
Well, the
standard.
way I read that is it says path breaking. Can you put it back? Path breaking ED ratio. So within the ED, critical patients are 1 to 2, acute patients are 1 to 5, subacute patients are 1 to 8 within the ER.
There we go.
And then it looks like
Much
also
better.
like the charge nurses, the triage nurse, the greeter, all those are not counted in the ratio calculation, which is good because they don't have a patient assignment necessarily.
That's great. So I think this looks good. Adrian, what are your thoughts?
So what's really important here is these penalties, right? And I'm really happy that a lot of people were bringing up the fact that there already are ICU ratios in the whole state of New York that have not been enforced. Liz, I talked about that. But I've seen now more and more people bringing this up to really put pressure on the governor. So one, everybody needs to put pressure on the governor to enforce those ratios. So just so people understand on this fine, I'm curious where the money goes. I don't know where the fine goes. So that'll be interesting to see that. So the only other time I've seen this in a contract is a contract that we actually had in the union I worked for, the local in Southern California, that there was a fine built in that was paid directly to, I think it was paid directly to the nurse. And it was $25 an hour if they were going over ratio. So what this would mean is that the base rate of the nurses needed to meet the ratio. Base rate, is that going to be a first year nurse pay? Is it going to be mid-year? Right. But what's important is that is a significant financial fine. And that this is actually the kind of language that nurses in all unions need to get, because it's really the only thing that works. Because you're going to say, okay, you're going to pay, if it's $500 a shift, then that's what you're going to pay. And I'm curious to where that money goes. So I don't know where it goes, if it goes into a fund or a Taft-Hartley type of funding. I'm not sure, but that is really important.
It'd be nice if those fines went directly back to the nurses that had to work that shift.
I want to say
would.
Right. Because I remember reading somewhere that I think it might go back to them. I can't find it now that I'm like looking through all the articles I have, but I think it does go back to the nurses that are not getting the appropriate assignment.
And they are kind of controversial because in some people might say, well, then you're incentivizing nurses to say, no, I'll go over ratio because I'll get more money. And, even in California, this was a California contract where we already have ratios, but the hospital, the company that starts with H and ends with A, was still forcing nurses over ratio and, under duress. So but it did serve its purpose, and it was a disincentive because there has to be accountability by that hospital or that department, right, to the CFO. The CFO has to be accountable. How much are you spending on this line item? Because what most people don't understand is that in larger corporations, travel nurses don't come out of the same budget as nursing service.
Yeah.
They often come out of a different budget. So it's really easy to kind of fudge it and hide those numbers.
Another thing I'd be kind of curious about is how much the fine is versus how many nurses are on shift. For example, if the fine is, $10,000 and you had, 2 nurses, that's like $5,000 for one shift. That's a heck of a, jump in funding. So I'd be kind of curious as to what the ratio is on, fine versus payout.
So it would be whatever. So if there is a 1 to 4 ratio and then that nurse has 5 patients and another nurse has 5 patients, my understanding is they're going to pay that twice. So however many people are out or whatever that ratio is. So whatever the staffing should be, right? Then you minus from whatever there actually are, and then times the base rate times 12 hours.
Oh, got it.
Yikers. AdCamp said, is the fine more than the cost of hiring a nurse? I would imagine cumulatively over time, it would the fine would be less, but they're not going to want to have to keep getting that fine, right? Because if you're doing it how they're doing it right now is essentially like their ratios were double, like, or triple what they're kind of being mandated down to. So that's going to add up really fast when you have every single shift, and think of how many nurses work in that hospital. Like, if everyone is overbooked, essentially, then they're just going to have to be paying like oodles of money. So I hope it works.
It
I
looks
mean, I
like
think
the way they structured it is, if they need 5 nurses and they only have 3, the fine is the wages they would have to pay those other 2 nurses. So they're paying for the full 5 nurses anyway.
so they might as well.
Might as well staff that. Although you're right, I don't think it comes out in the wash, because when you have a nurse you hire, you're not only paying an hourly wage, you're also paying benefits. So they don't have to pay that to the phantom nurse that they're paying in
the key is going to be really enforcement on this, honestly, and that they'll be, and the thing is, though, they will be able to track this. So now there will be a mechanism where there will be some accountability. I'm sure there's some way that this is all going to be tracked. And so as they, meet again throughout the year, and then especially go into the next bargaining, if the hospital's not holding their end of the deal up, right? Because one, they can go to arbitration over it. They can, file a charge against the hospital. There are other actions that the union could take, but it also isn't going to look good. I mean, this strike did not last. It lasted, 72 hours?
Yeah.
80 hours? Right? We knew this wasn't going to last long, right? So the hospitals already know that they can't, that this has really set a precedent with these nurses going on strike. And there are some different tiers to what each facility, each group got.
And I think hopefully,
I want to point out those ratios too, while our precedent setting, are not equivalent to the California ratios for the ER.
we all know you live in the golden land.
Yeah, I just want to put it in perspective. So you're thinking, wow, that's really good. 1 to 8 in the subacute area is crazy to me, because of what I have to compare it to here, which is the ER is basically 1 to 4 across the board, unless you have someone who's going to the ICU, and then it's 1 to 1 or 1 to 2, depending on their
that's for subacute level care. That's subacute. That's the subacute units.
No, that's the subacute area within the ER.
Yeah, all of those ratios were.
Is it?
What was in? They only
What's a
specified
subacute in an ER?
It's like the
probably
fast
like
track urgent care area.
ear infections.
Things we don't expect to be admitted.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And of
People
course,
who-
subacute area. I remember my old hospital had a whole subacute area with 12 beds. And when it got busy, the subacute area became the acute area. It was just overflow, and they would all be waiting to go upstairs, and they'd just be stuck in that area.
So I don't know if you guys have heard this or know anybody working in New Jersey, but New Jersey nurses, come on over now to New York and work, because now New Jersey nurses are going to 1 to 9 in the ERs.
Oh,
Wow.
And there's a takeover. There's been quite a takeover of the health system in New Jersey. So it is mostly a monopoly of a single hospital system. So there is a lot of incentive now. So this is where, in these dense areas where people, often they're probably living in New Jersey and going to New York, right? This will hopefully drive some, better staffing levels, because New Jersey is getting rapidly out of control. And they, I believe, also passed an EMS ruling that you only have to have one person on the truck now, which I don't even know how that works.
works? Yeah. How do you just kind of pat the back and be like, "Good luck,
right,
buddy.
I'm
I'll
driving.
see you in 20."
I'm going to drive, and then you're just going to be on your own back there. Okay,
You
great.
thump twice if you are going to die imminently, and we'll pull
Doing
over.
CPR
Okay,
and driving.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like,
Wow.
Yeah, we had a problem because I used to work EMS, and that was something they were talking about pushing was, we'll just have a driver that has no medical training whatsoever, and then you'll have your medic who's helping with the patient. But 90% of the time you arrive on scene, you need those 2 people. Again, anything serious, intubation, CPR, starting a line, pretty much any of that stuff, you want more than one person. Backboarding, any of this stuff, you need 2 people, and with medical training.
yeah.
Can't even imagine what
CPR,
their
especially,
phone is.
like, I can barely make it 2 minutes before I needed like
Yeah.
a physical,
Oh,
like an exhausted break. And the other person in CPR is doing stuff like they're either like giving them oxygen, or like trying to get lines in them. Like, this is not a one person job.
I think
Also,
they
they'll
recommend-
both be dead when they get there if you have to do CPR for like more than 6 minutes, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I think the official recommendation for CPR is you do it no more than like 30 seconds or a minute, and you're supposed to, or 2 minutes, and you switch out because of the fatigue. And
Yeah.
Yeah, we switched every 2. I mean, I
Yeah.
think
And
that's
if-
like whatever the CPR guidelines are,
so
but
many cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's every 2 minutes, and if you're doing CPR correctly, A, their ribs are broken, and B, you are flat out exhausted.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah, for real. So that's the strike. Yay, nurses. I'm hoping that this kind of creates like a pull up effect, right? Because this was just at one hospital, like 2 hospitals in the system, which there's a lot more healthcare systems within like the Montefiore system. So now like the other ones will hopefully be like, well, I want what they have. Also, if you work there and you happen to know what the ratios are, because it specified the ER ratios, but I couldn't find the like rest of the hospital ratios. If you trip and fall and your information falls into my email, which is right here, that would be unfortunate, and it would remain anonymous, and it might end up on the internet. But it would be interesting to us to learn what your ratios actually are throughout the whole thing. Is this being implemented? If you have any insider scoop, like I said, if you trip and fall and it lands there, I can't help that. And we'll go from there. I wanted a moment to, have you guys seen the did Adrian turned me on to this. She found me this beautiful, wonderful website that has been giving me life. Have you seen the Mt Sinai Instagram page? This person is going to require a new job. So they threw a public temper tantrum. I'm trying to, we're going to just dive into it for a moment here to break up some topics here, because they went a little bit overboard. So this is NYSNA, is the New York State Nurses Association. That is the union, right? And one of the hospitals that was having the strike was Mt Sinai, and whoever's in charge of their social media they were not a fan of what was happening. So they just started going on blast for their nurses, like at the nurses essentially. And if you need a good time, I will leave it linked down below, but you can look over all of these. It kind of has a lot of things in the vein of why won't NYSNA leadership agree to the same deal it has with the other 8 hospitals? So like, why aren't you accepting this contract when all of your friends have? We have some, NYSNA has finally agreed to meet back at the table. We reiterated our offer where we're trying to put nurses first, which is funny because if you were trying to put nurses first, you would listen to them and not just try to shove money at them, which is what they were doing. I appreciate you, Adrian, for finding this for me. This was
Wait, is the one,
this was
I
the
don't know
best.
if they put it on. It's so golden, and I am glad you got screenshots because I didn't get a chance, and I pray it's not still up. All those are not still up on their Instagram account, but if they are, that's even better. But there was something, I think it was Mount Sinai, where it was like a manager with like
Yes.
the strike breaker, like,
Uh-huh.
here's a nurse who really cares.
Uh-huh.
And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I actually feel bad for that manager. I feel bad for anybody who's quoted in this, because they're not going to have a good time in their job as these nurses have gone back to work. There is a lot of like, okay, we're going to move forward, because things get very escalated in a strike. And when you've got a hospital like this, that's just basically like stoking the fire to the workers, this is a PR nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
This is a temper tantrum that this hospital was happening. Basically, like all of this, the subcontext is all of your nursing
Right.
friends are accepting the contracts. Why won't you? And we're just going to like publicly shame you and make all these random posts. But if you were a patient, could you imagine? Like, I mean, I don't think patients really follow like
Well,
hospitals.
remember we talked about this, that I think it was us on our live, or it might have been me on my video, but about that, there's got to be something about this CEO at Mount Sinai who's got a very big ego and is a gaslighter and a narcissist. And then you see these Instagram posts that really kind of bear that out, that this is a real ego issue. This is somebody, basically having a temper tantrum online via their communications department. And I'm sure that there's other people that are just cringing in the C-suite that these things went up. But I guarantee you that CEO is a piece of work in that hospital.
Sure. Oh, I'm sure. I like this one. Mount Sinai nurses continue to work in like the other hospitals and take care of patients. Please join your colleagues at the Mt Sinai Hospital. No, thank you. Please give us what we would like.
It's the comments too. The comments.
Oh, the
were-
comments are like golden. I liked this one. Which one did it say? There was one. Oh, this when it told everyone that this was thread 1 of 11. And everyone was like, 1 of 11. We need to find out who runs this Instagram account, who's writing these announcements. We all know that Sinai left the bargaining table and refused to go back. But all the people, 11 planned posts. This is going to be a doozy. Everyone was just like, yes, like I'm here. I'm ready. Let's go. Big 1 to 11. Right? Yeah, it's a hot mess. So this is a good time if you want to
There
go
are
and read some snark.
sometimes when, the truth comes out and it comes out very clearly and it's irrefutable. And I really hope, I know, NYC as a union isn't going to, do anything with this, but this is something that, really just needs to go in the history books and be used as don't make this mistake. And this is, again, I can guarantee you, these were some lawyers that realized, oh, we've got a CEO who's really dug in and we're going to milk this company at our $750 an hour rate with our whole team of lawyers and just say, yeah, that's a good idea. Put out some of this and put out this, really instigate them. Yeah, this will work. This will be effective. And
What could
keep,
go wrong?
paying us
Uh-huh.
10 grand a day. This is somebody who wants to make partner in the law firm who is now, just feeding off of this ego of the CEO. And this is how it works. The lawyers, often misguide these hospitals and really send them in the wrong direction. As far as tactics, but this is, it's a faux pas. I mean, some of this stuff should just go on like shirts. I don't know.
It's so funny. Like, honestly, if you need a palate cleanser in just like life, just go read it because people are so fired up. And it's like the entire nursing world just descended on this Instagram account and was like, I have a lot of feelings and I'm going to direct them in your direction for about a week. Here we go. I was typing out a lot of responses that I then had to like delete. I'm like, wait, Liz, the internet is forever. Go back, turn around. Okay, wait, just hold on. But they did not do that. And we appreciate them. I did screenshot a lot of them. And one day we might just make a compilation snark video and go through it. And it'll be a great time. It's Anya's in New Jersey. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's very expensive there. Your taxes are very, very high. I had a lot of friends in college that lived in New Jersey, and now apparently you don't have healthcare. So that's unfortunate. So I did screenshot it. Milo says, what's the likelihood of having a nationalized nursing union? I would say we can't agree on anything in this country, so it's none. Does anyone else have any opinions?
We can't even agree on a national license. How could we possibly agree on a union?
Yeah.
Let alone our education system. Like we're not ready.
So the largest nurses union is actually, well, NNU might be close now, but I still think the largest nurses union is the American Federation of Teachers. So I believe they are still, the AFT is still the largest. But it's important to understand because a lot of folks have commented to me about why can't LVNs be in the same union as RNs, although they could be that's a decision of the union. But then what happens is LVN, there are bargaining units. So RNs are in their own bargaining unit. We are in our own bargaining unit as defined by the National Labor Relations Act. LVNs are in what's called the technical bargaining unit. So they are in with respiratory therapists, radiology techs, lab techs, not lab scientists. Those are in professional. So anybody who basically has a 1 to 2 year formal education for their role is in what's considered the technical bargaining unit, which is typically a bit of a smaller bargaining unit in a hospital. And then there's a service bargaining unit, which is a huge bargaining unit. So there's professionals, but there's 5 main bargaining units in a hospital. So unless a hospital agrees and says, yeah, we'll let you organize the LVNs alone. I mean, a hospital and a union can come to an agreement about who gets organized in a union. But as far as the NLRB goes, it has to be by bargaining unit.
Short answer, it sounds like is no. This sounds difficult. And I don't think
there's not a capacity. There honestly is not capacity. I mean, we're talking the amount. I mean, this strike, undoubtedly costs NYSA quite a bit of money. The amount of staff it takes to run 8 tables. I mean, the amount of resources it took them to run all these tables simultaneously, staff, communications, all of it is enormous. They must have been pulling people from all over the country to come to New York to support the strike and support this bargaining process.
For sure. And I would imagine just with how different, so in the United States, healthcare is run by your state, and a lot of the rules only apply to your state. And I think it could get probably difficult if you had a union, a national nurses union, when our states are so different and the laws for nurses are so different, because then you would have to have people who know those specific, like it would just have to be huge. And then it kind of like gets weird. It would be great if we just had like, and then it would like, and then you say, oh, it'd be great if we just had federal laws saying, hey, the federal government doesn't decide nursing ratios, because that's in healthcare, which is again a state. But even then you get into weird things of like rural health, rural health is going to be, those ratios are going to be way different than like an urban setting, because you're usually like the smaller hospitals, you're less sick. You're not going to be on 12 drips while you're in a med surg unit if you're in the hospital down the street in the middle of like Kansas. But we're in a more city setting, like your med surg patients are probably ICU patients in a different house. So it just kind of gets weird that way. But it would definitely be great if we had more of this energy.
There's certainly nothing stopping any states from passing
Yeah.
ratios in their states. Nothing stopping any state from passing laws to allow all workers to organize, public sector workers to unionize, because we have a large number of nurses who work in the public sector, university systems, school systems, prisons, colleges, etc., and in public health systems as well. And also safety issues for healthcare workers, and passing, again, we're hoping for another reintroduction of federal legislation for a safe work environment.
Yes, all of that. We need that. So that's your first homework assignment. Okay. You didn't know you were getting homework, but here you are, is writing to your state representative or senator or whoever, as long as they're at the state level, and letting them know that you want safe patient ratios. And here's why. And you can tell them whatever scary story that you've experienced or you've worked through, or someone you can borrow any of ours. We've certainly shared a few, and just say why. Like, it's not because we're lazy. It's because, hello, we would, just like to be able to do our jobs and do them well and keep patients alive, because it's not happening right now and it's frightening. We'll use that to transition into someone who is still alive, which is very great and fun. I'm very glad for him. We're transitioning to our next topic, which is Damar Hamlin. Why is this about a tornado? No, internet, no. If you guys saw on the news, Damar Hamlin is a football player who went to cardiac arrest. So his heart stopped on the football field, like right after a play, stood up, passed out. And then a lot of people watched him get like CPR, and he had to be defibrillated. He was in the hospital for quite a while, and actually is now at home and is looking like he's like speaking, like neurologically intact. And whenever we say that, we just mean like your brain is working. You're going to have some things that might take you a minute to like get back up to speed, but like he's okay. And his brain is working like it pretty much used to, which is amazing, honestly, because the rates of survival from CPR are not super, but he's home. So that's awesome. They think it was something called, people are speculating. No one's given out his personal like health diagnosis, commotio cordis, which is basically when you get hit with like blunt trauma to your chest at a certain cycle, because your heart's it's a little electrical box mixed with plumbing. And if the plumbing and the electrical are doing a certain thing at a certain time and you hit it, apparently, this happens a lot, I guess, in hockey and in baseball, your heart will stop, which is not ideal. So that happened, but he's at home, which is great. But the thing I wanted to talk about with this was just a reminder that what we see at work a lot is kind of traumatic, right? Because the rest of the world was kind of traumatized by this. They were like, oh my gosh, everyone was talking about like, have you seen this happen? And like everyone had to watch all this CPR happen. It's brutal. And if you don't handle that well, then it's okay to like know that that's normal. I used to feel really bad because I was like, I hate codes. I hate them with everything in my body. And I felt bad that I was like, I knew I can't stay at like the bedside because I can't see this forever. And then I felt bad. And I was like, well, maybe I'm just like a crappy healthcare person, but it turns out that's like normal because the rest of the country was horrified. And we don't get extra training to deal with like this type of stuff. But he's doing better. And that's great.
Well, this is a good place to put in a public service announcement. One of the big reasons he survived that was because A, everybody watched him go down. B, he got immediate treatment. It couldn't have been faster.
Mm-hmm.
And so if any responsible adult, I think, should learn CPR, whether or not you actually get certified in it. Learn how to do it. You can save your loved one's life. You can save your kid's life. You can save your neighbor's life, especially if you see them go down right in front of you. And the survival rate for CPR, I think, is 1 in 10, but it goes up dramatically with every minute that you're on top of that chest soon.
Yep. And even if you can't afford to take official CPR classes, YouTube has a million of them.
Yes,
I'll try to remember
absolutely.
to link one down below.
Yeah.
And it will teach you the basics, even if you don't technically have like whatever the
Yeah. Bad
CPR.
CPR is better than no CPR.
Exactly.
And they're already dead.
Exactly.
You're not going to make them any worse. So
That's
it's
right.
better just do bad CPR than just let them be dead.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And so I wanted to say that. And two, that was a much more encouraging, encouraging. My takeaway was going to be talk to your loved ones, no matter how old you are, about what you want to happen to you if you were to end up in a situation where you were not waking up. Okay. What would you like that to happen? Because as we can see, this can happen to, you don't have to be like older or having like chronic conditions, but having conversations like this, they're uncomfortable, but just tell someone else and maybe get it in writing, what you would like to happen to you in the event of something like this. And I think sometimes these situations can be good catalysts for having these conversations. Danny, this had nothing to do with an immunization. Okay. It does not have anything to do with that.
And this is really interesting. So just for everybody watching, the reason we don't often hear about this happening is because we don't often hear, one, it happens mostly to teenagers.
Mhm.
The average age is 15, and it's actually a rather North American phenomenon. I don't know if it's because of the sports that are played in North America. But again, hockey, it's baseball, a ball like hitting, and it's happening, I believe, and if anybody else knows, it's happening right when repolarization is happening in the heart, and then you go into a ventricular fibrillation. Is that
It's
what
one
it is?
of those.
I'm a cardiac. I was a cardiac nurse. So again, it's literally a perfect storm. So your heart has to be at a certain place in the electrical conduction process. Your heart is like, think of a distributor cap on an old car. It's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so it has to be hitting right. You get that impact at that exact pressure location right at that point in that electrical cycle. And so it often, again, it's very rare over the age of 20. And it actually was only recently, it happened mostly with industrial workers, believe it or not, in the late 1800s. That was the first kind of knowledge of it even happening, and how they figured that out then, I don't know. I think they had EKGs then, but there was that was a phenomenon that would happen from chest trauma, construction workers and forestry people, I believe.
And I lived in Australia for a couple of years, and any place under the crown, that, particularly cricket players. Cricket's a little bit like baseball in that they use a really hard ball and they throw it. And we saw a couple of cricket players when I was in Australia go down for the very same reason. They get hit right in the middle of the chest and they hit the deck right there.
Yep. And yes, so I'm very glad he's better. I did briefly want to touch on the fact that everyone's out here running around saying that there's a conspiracy theory that, this is because people got like COVID vaccine boosters. There have been in the population. So like, that's just not true. And Danny, if I was trying to censor you, I wouldn't let you be here, but here you are. If you look at cardiac events, they have always been happening. You can go back and search this in the news. The famous people, it gets in the news. I am a cardiac nurse. I have been taking care of adolescents. These are common injuries. This is why we do pre-sports physicals. We want to try to catch these things. A lot of the times kids, you don't know they have heart stuff until all of a sudden something happens. And when you have a heart issue and you are a child or an athlete, you push until you no longer can push. And then your body kills you for a minute and hopefully they can get you back and bring you back. But you don't sit there. Most young men, especially, don't sit there and say, this is uncomfortable. I will sit and rest. They say, this is uncomfortable. I will drink more Gatorade and more caffeine and I will keep going. And then their heart eventually is like, well, we're done. So this is something that we have seen forever. The incidence is not going up. Since COVID started, have we seen an increased incidence of young adults having issues with cardiac complications like this? Yes, but that has been going up with the rate of the virus, because you're more likely, if you get COVID, to actually have a cardiac event like this, versus if you get the shot, you have a less likelihood. So yes, there is an increased chance, but it's less of an increase as if you had COVID. So that is what the increase is from the actual illness. It's not related to the vaccine. This has nothing to do with the COVID vaccine. Get off of Facebook.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I've had nurses send me things. Oh, there's all these athletes dropping. I'm like, that's because it's stupid. You have girls. They're not playing football. Guess what? Football players drop all the time. I mean, in Vegas, heat exhaustion, overwatering, too much water, dilute all the red blood cells. Then you don't carry oxygen. You're not getting electrolytes on a field. I mean, this happens. I was an athlete. In the 80s, we saw athletes drop, right? I mean, it's just exertion. And if you are in a very warm climate as well, there's a lot of things that happen. I mean, we don't see it. And again, this was on live TV. So we know about it. And there were medical personnel right there, thank goodness. And this gentleman is very lucky, very, very fortunate, because, the resuscitation rate is less than 35%. That's a rather high margin. And some people spontaneously, I was reading, come back from it. Like I was reading some research where they actually saw kids teenagers turn blue, basically, and then just spontaneously resuscitate themselves. I don't know. It's crazy, right? So, but it has a lot to do with prolonged QT intervals. If people are could be on certain medications, certain propensity. So if you have, and again, remember, athletes are really in good shape. They typically are going to have a lower heart rate. So they're going to, by nature, have a little bit longer of a QT interval than most of us that aren't in great shape, that don't have a heart rate of 45, that don't already have a heart condition. So that can actually contribute to commotio motus. So,
and in general, that is super rare. Heart issues with athletes, it's not, and it has not been. I was a bedside nurse a while ago, long before any of this other stuff happened. And I cannot tell a huge portion of our unit, because all we did was hearts, was teenage athletes who now had to have heart transplants because an acute event happened to them and their heart was just like, I'm done. So this is not, it's sad. It's not new. And there's always going to be people out there who are trying to twist the numbers and say, oh my gosh, this is new. It's not new. Go back and look up sudden cardiac death in every year prior to when all this happened, and you will see many stories of it. Okay. Please do not do not go into the conspiracy theories of it. People are taking a situation that was sad and making it into some conspiracy nonsense. We're not here for it. We're not here for it. Anything else anyone has to say that's less angry?
Well, I just, genetics play a role. I mean, folks, some of us are old enough to remember the very famous runner, Jim Fixx, right? He died at a very young age. I think he was in his 40s. But he had, his father died at a young age of cardiac arrest. So there is a genetic predisposition. We inherit our DNA and our genes. So there's a lot that goes into it. Life is a miracle.
Yeah.
So life is a miracle, everybody. And there's just, it is, we used to say, I had a teacher tell me once, it's really is hard to die, but then it is this really fragile balance. And if you've got the combination of maybe some genes, environmental factors, maybe some, bad lifestyle choices over time that are chronic, look who we just lost yesterday. We just, Lisa Marie Presley, right? Look at the people that my generation seem to be dropping like flies. So again, there are factors that go into all of this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just had a birthday this week.
Happy birthday, Scott.
I'm glad I made it.
Happy birthday.
I'm glad I made it to 55, because the 54-year-olds are dropping. Lisa Marie Presley, and now today, Adam Rich, if you remember the little boy on the 8 is Enough. He was 54. He just died today. So I'm like, I made it to 55, so that's something.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
I don't know. Yeah, knock on wood. So I don't know. I had to step away a second. I'm sorry. I don't know if you covered it, but do you remember the precordial thump? Did you talk about that?
I was going to say that sometimes those spontaneous recoveries, when they gasp for breath after a moment, That acts like a precordial thump and reset the heart.
Would you like to explain a precordial thump?
Yeah, it's not part of ACLS, Advanced Cardiac Life Support, anymore. But when you have an irregular rhythm in the heart, the electrical rhythm is, you use a defibrillator, which gives a shock of electricity, and it brings it back, kind of resets it into its normal rhythm. Now, if you don't have a defibrillator nearby or an AED, you can thump the chest. And that physical thumping causes some electrical activity that might do it. I've seen it actually in one of my doctors did it. I was like, we just put him on the monitor. And I said, look, I just put him on the monitor. He's in this rhythm. The doctor's like, boom. And I'm like, not really protocol anymore, but it worked. And because if you do it right, it works.
Well, sometimes you run out of defibrillators. I mean, I worked on a unit and we often were, the plug has gone off the defibrillator. I mean, and if you're old school, then you probably saw it happen. But yeah, I've seen cardiologists do it too.
Just don't get misled by the TV. If you watch like MASH or one of these and they're just like, boom, that's not how you do it. Like as your elbow rests on their stomach, boom. You don't come down out of that. There's that. And also when you do use the defibrillator, just to go off topic, I was watching Emergency the other day on TV from the 70s, and they do this. And I'm like, that's where that shit started, is on this show. That was one of the first shows that started that. When you use a defibrillator pad on a patient, first of all, we use patches now attached to wires. But if you do, it sounds like this. And the person does this. They don't.
Although I do like to make the sound effect when I've been in codes. I like to make the sound effect.
I mean, if you want to add something, that's fine. But in real life, it's a click and they flex because you're contracting these muscles on this side. They don't bounce this way. You're not contracting those muscles. That makes no sense. But it's better Hollywood, to choke and jump off the table. It's just
look, in my opinion, LA just it's Hollywood movies. It's like hey, you can hire any of us here. We will help be consultants. Any of us.
Go back and watch ER from, what has it been, 20 years now or more? They did have a technical consultant. He was one of our docs at Cedar Sinai, was a technical consultant. And I was like, hey, can you get me on the show? That didn't happen. But they were very accurate, except for the fact that everything that happens in one day. On a TV show where that might happen over a couple of weeks, that we get this weird case and that weird case and this person fighting. And there's always that, and the machines don't always go beep when someone arrests. I mean, there's an alarm that goes off, but it's all, and the music doesn't start.
You didn't have music? You didn't have music on yours?
No. And the other thing I always noticed when they intubated a patient, when they put that tube in their throat to breathe for them, it was always, I'm in. No doctor I've ever known has yelled, I'm in. They intubate and then they connect everything and listen. And anyway, so.
Now, what you're more likely to hear is the respiratory therapist saying you're not in.
You need to yeah.
I'm really trying to be mature about this conversation. It's a very serious conversation, but it's just not what my brain is right
and we are not giving medical advice. So
Scott is not trying to tell you how to
are not giving medical advice. No.
Don't hold your arm like this. Hold it back a little bit more and
don't thump anybody's chest. Well, and if you defibrillate, if you give electricity to the heart on a certain part of the cardiac cycle, you throw things into chaos. So you actually make it worse. So when it's already worse, when it's already jagged and you shock, it brings it back, hopefully brings it back. If you're doing what's called synchronized cardioversion, the computer in the defibrillator or the cardioverter times the shock not to hit on I think it's the R wave. So if you have, if this guy got hit in the chest playing football and it hit him on his R wave,
right.
If that just happened to be where in the heartbeat he was, that may have been related to this. I don't know for sure. I didn't look at
this. This is all information for the next time you fly Air France.
Air France.
The next time
you may die.
You're in a plane.
But if you do, and you are in a public place, the defibrillator will speak to you. So nobody panic. Okay. You open up this box. If you like, let's say someone collapses. Okay. And you and your friend Susan are going to revive this person because you watched this video and then you went to YouTube and you're like, I'm going to learn how to do CPR. One of you is doing the CPR. The other one opens the defibrillator thing. There's these plastic stickers, right? It shows you where to put the plastic stickers, and then you hit a button and it goes boop, and then it talks to you and it literally says like, we're scanning something, and then it'll say like, stand back, and then it does it
Analyzing rhythm.
Analyzing rhythm.
Do not touch the patient.
Yes.
And then it'll say, stand back, shock indicated. Press the button and it'll go chunk, and it'll go shock delivered, resume CPR. It does.
Make sure you're not touching them. Yeah.
They are really awesome. They are really awesome.
And that's the reason, I think, a couple of reasons why he survived was, one, he was young, he was in good physical condition. Two, CPR started within a minute. Where in the world do you arrest and have CPR start within a minute? And the AED was right there. And this is exactly why CPR was invented. It wasn't for grandma who's 95 years old on, dying of everything, as one last ditch effort to bring her back. It wasn't invented for that. That's why it doesn't work in that situation. It was made for exactly this.
Yes.
I want to add something for the AEDs there.
Yes.
So if you're in a public place, like a mall or something like that, and you see somebody go down, you don't have to worry about the AED actually hurting somebody, because it does analyze the heart rhythm first. So it'll go, okay, yeah, like Scott was saying, analyzing, and if it is indicated, it's like, oh yeah, there's one of these rhythms we should shock, it'll shock. But if it's not going to do anything. So you're not going to be able to hurt somebody with one of these. So don't be afraid to use one if it's indicated. It's like, oh God, somebody went down. You can use it without fear of hurting them.
Yes.
Yeah. Start CPR right away. And they're everywhere. They're in malls and airports. And look around the next time you're out in public.
Gyms.
See, fire extinguishers. A lot of times they're near fire extinguishers, just like we're used to having fire extinguishers everywhere. If you look next time you're out, you'll see those AEDs, automatic electric defibrillators. Yeah. Automatic external defibrillators. Thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of fitness centers have them now too. A lot of fitness centers and like churches.
Yep. The only place I've ever had to use one in public was at a fitness center. And so a second thing from this is there's extra pads. And so if you need to remove hair from someone, just slap it on and rip it off. And that'll take the hair off, and you can put another pad right back on. Because the only time I've ever had to use it, I had to do that. And that was what people were more amazed by than the fact that I knew how to operate this thing. They were like, wow, that was such a good idea. And I was like, that's what you're impressed by? Like,
friends and neighbors, even if you're not a medical professional, an aspiring nurse, an experienced nurse, if you're just watching this, you can take a CPR class. And this is actually part of the CPR class. That's where Liz learned this, was from the CPR class, where they say, for hairy chest, put it on, rip it off, get some new pads, put it on the bare skin, and go for it. Yeah. You too can.
Or YouTube it.
Yeah, that's a good challenge to put out to all your viewers. Take CPR, you guys. Learn CPR and have your advanced directive done.
And infant and child CPR, because kids,
choking.
they choke and stuff happens. They drown in pools, and God knows I've seen that. It's horrible. And like Red Cross teaches first aid. I took a first aid course through Red Cross. I'm like, this is fascinating. This is what I want to do. I want to know this stuff inside and out. And even as a layperson, isn't it great to know what to do?
Yeah.
If something happens, whether it's a burn or a stroke symptoms or a heart attack or a fall, a head injury. Yeah.
It is excellent. Like, it is so reassuring to know how to do that, especially the choking stuff. I feel like, because you're much more, it's good to know CPR, and I think everyone should know how to do it. But the number of times that, I have small children, that I have had to help my children not choke, and like, you feel pretty badass when like everyone at the table is like, oh my God, like she is choking, and you just like very casually walk over and you're like, like, and she launches it out of her face, and then you just go resume your seat. Everyone's like, you're like, yeah, it's fine.
And if you haven't taken CPR, do it anyway, because your best effort is better than no effort at all. Do compressions and do them fast and deep, like Dr. Mike always says, compressions. And
to the tune of staying alive. That's the beat you want in adults,
nice and
teenagers.
fast, 100 beats a minute.
Kids, just faster.
And don't worry about hurting someone or being sued for getting involved. The Good Samaritan laws are supposed to have your back, unless you do something really like stupid, like kick the guy in the head thinking that'll revive him. That's gross negligence. You're going to get sued. If you try to do CPR in good faith, then you should be all right. Please
Yeah, take a CPR class. It's great. They're good, you know, and get some people together, get some friends together. There's, you know, I had some friends in nursing school that actually started a business doing mobile CPR classes. So it was really a big thing.
That's cool.
Before that they would just go to people's homes. They would do it for, you know, schools, PTA, you know, get a group together. Make sure that in your church or if you belong to any social organizations that there's people there that know who CPR and know who they are. And it's really important, definitely. So it's a very valuable thing to learn. I used to work in a, when I was a waitress, if anybody can imagine that, there was a leisure village just next door. And so we all had to know CPR because these people were just like they were just like little Blue Betty and her, you know, splitting the lunch plate with her friend. Yeah, people would drop sometimes. There were occasions. It was a little more often than not.
I can see you as a waitress going, well, you want to order what? No, wait, do you know where that comes from? You don't want that.
I did punch a waiter when I was the cashier in the same place and almost got fired. But he called me a name in front of everybody, and I just wasn't the right person to do that to. So I did punch him in the face. So, yeah. So,
Adrian, I worked in like restaurants for like 10 years. I feel like we would have gotten along well. Like that same level of just like in the back, you know.
I worked at the busiest Denny's. I also worked at the busiest Denny's in the state of California in San Luis Obispo, which endless night shift, which was crazy. That was like the craziest place. It was me and the cook after like, you know, 3 a.m. and the bars would empty. And what a character. I'll never forget that guy. He was great. And if anybody, you know, messed with me, he would just put a little soap under their little dish soap under their omelet and then serve it. And
amazing.
That would take care of any problem customers.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
I used to tell people, and then I kept getting almost fired for it. I would be like, this is Chili's. Like if they complained about something that was like, I was like, why would you expect anything different? I was like, this is Chili's.
I mean, the bar has certainly been raised by Waffle House now, right? I mean, I feel like Waffle House Wendy needs to come and teach nurses self-defense. I feel like, we need to, she's up the bar now as far as, those are amazing reflexes. I just, got to hand it to her.
I know. Rachel wants to know, do people actually yell clear when you are defibrillating someone?
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Then more than that, they were taught to actually look like everybody clear. You're clear. I'm clear. You look at the feet. You look at the head. Nobody's touching you. You do it. Although I've heard that if you're touching, you get a tingle. It's not like you're gonna suddenly get a.
It's a big tingle, Scott.
It's a big tingle.
I might have experienced it, and it's a big tingle.
It's not good, but it's not deadly. So just let's put it in perspective. Yes, please be clear.
It might burn holes through your shoes. I'm just saying now.
It might make you fall a little bit backwards into the people behind you.
It's not quite as severe as being struck by lightning, and maybe perhaps a little bit more than if you stick your finger in the socket, which I've done.
See,
I think that's a really big scale.
Yeah, we have a good. So I have been electrocuted from a socket, and it was not fun. It's not as bad as that. I will say it's not as bad as that, but it's definitely more than like.
It depends on what you're touching too. If you're touching the patient or the sheets or the bed rail or, anyway, yes, they do. We do. Yes, say clear.
Yeah. If you have scissors hanging out of your pocket.
An AED before, gonna try and keep it that way.
Yeah, it's really not something. Not super duper fun.
Don't bring metal into the MRI room and don't get shocked by an AED. That's another very dangerous place is the MRI room.
Going back to Adrian's comment. Going back to Adrian's comment a few minutes ago, get a group of friends together and go learn CPR because I've told people in the past, if we're out in a restaurant and I go down and I'm the only one in that restaurant that knows CPR, I'm going to be pissed. So,
yep.
Be one pissed corpse.
Make it a family thing. I mean, honestly, make it a family event. If now that I think about it, it's probably something I should, get my family involved in. But make it a family thing. Make sure people know in the family how to do CPR. It's really important, you guys, because you're going to be able to use it. And if you don't know how to do it, and you're in that situation, you could have taken that couple-hour class. It's not even that expensive. Red Cross, I think, does it. I mean, some hospitals used to do it for free. I don't know if they still are. But you just need the community-based CPR. It's not the same thing that we take as nurses. And just do it. It's super easy.
And going back to our morbid conversations about, talking about what do you want to happen to you and discussing that, it's also good to learn about CPR because then you learn how brutal it is. Because I think a lot of people don't really understand that. And so when they talk about like end of life planning or like what would happen to me in this case, or what do I want to happen to my mom, if mom's unconscious, understanding how brutal, because right, everyone was watching this and they're like, oh my gosh, that was like horrific. CPR is horrific. You are breaking someone's ribs so that you can then manually pump their heart through their chest wall. Like it's a lot. And I would say a lot of times during a code, that was one of the biggest things was people were like, the family was like, I did not think it would be like that. Like that's a lot. Please stop. Once we start, we can't stop. So.
And I mean, and I'm, kind of going back to, the issue of athletes and doing CPR, right? I mean, I would imagine there's quite a bit of resistance because of the musculature. Somebody who is really, buff, it's going to be a lot more resistance. They're younger. They're going to have more elasticity in their ribs. But again, as you get older, it's going, and depending on who's doing it, of course. I mean, I'm a little heavier, so it really just depends on who's doing the CPR, and the age of that person. But again, you are going to break ribs. I mean, and that's the thing when people talk about how traumatic that was to watch, right? And I'm like, I have never not broken anybody's ribs. I've never not had that happen.
Well, if you don't break ribs, you're not going deep enough.
Exactly.
Unless it's a child. A child is very different, I will say.
They're very elastic.
Kids are very pliable.
Yeah.
But you only break ribs on that first compression, really.
Yes.
You're really you're separating the sternum from the ribs that connect. When you push down inward, they all kind of go crunk, and then from then on.
Thanks for the visual.
I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of people. It's always been about the same amount of resistance, really.
I found it very different on like kind of bigger guys versus like maybe older, smaller, elderly women. Myself, but again,
makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it is harder too if somebody is actually kind of a little bit obese, then you're also at your angle is a little different also. So you're kind of almost going from the head down in some occasions because you obviously can't get on top of them. But yeah, it's, so again, this is what healthcare workers go through all the time, and we don't really have that time to recover from it. So again, it's another opportunity for the public to exercise and deploy some empathy for healthcare workers as well and what we deal with.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that a lot of TV shows kind of made it seem a lot more, blasé. It's like, oh no, they've had a problem with their heart. Start CPR, and they do 30 compressions, shock them, and the patient's like, oh good, I'm better now. Thank you. It's like, no, it's a lot more of a process to that. It's not really that fast of a recovery.
Oh, and they show doctors doing CPR. I've actually never seen a doctor do CPR, chest compressions. Just saying.
They have another job to do.
My
it's not
opinion.
that they couldn't or don't want to. It's just they have other responsibilities.
And I've had doctors actually walk by rooms where the patient's coding and just say, no, I'm not doing that.
I read an article years ago about how the public is being misled because the rate of television CPR recovery from CPR on television is like at 90%. In reality, it's like 2 or 4%.
Mm-hmm.
But again, because it's meant for this one specific kind of situation. And in that case, if it started early, AED early, all that, you do have a high rate of recovery. But if you're doing on every little old person that has chronic and end stage disease that's dying, that's not what it's for. You wait, and nobody wants to get involved, and so they bring them into the ER and drop them off, and they've been down now for how long? It doesn't work with that either.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I said I feel so sad when 96-year-old Betty with COPD, heart failure, high blood pressure, dementia, and chronic kidney disease, and is a full code. Yeah, poor Betty.
It has to do with the family's readiness, and some families they think if they don't try, that means they don't love them, and you have to say no. That's sometimes the most loving thing to do is be with them. It's not always trying to save them, and if you don't make the effort, doesn't mean you don't love them. But the first reaction is, you have to do everything for my mother. I love my mother. I would do anything for her, and you need to do everything you can. Use all the drugs in the hospital. It's not until you get into a more in-depth and empathetic kind of conversation with the family that they understand that's not what CPR is for. No, yeah, it's a Hail Mary. It is.
Yeah.
It's not a routine.
If I could jump on what Scott was saying earlier. Yeah, I read similar statistics on that where, yeah, CPR doesn't bring people back. You're buying time until you can get an AED there to try and, shock their heart if you have the right rhythms there to bring them back. But yeah, CPR itself, there's less than 5% chance that they're going to spontaneously be, oh, good, I'm better now. But even then, those numbers, I've seen them be a little bit squishy depending on who was checking to see if the patient had a pulse first or not, where they're like, yeah, it's such a small percentage that we're not sure if they were actually in cardiac arrest or had some sort of arrhythmia or something like that first. So it may have just been a misdiagnosis of what, condition they were in.
And you do CPR, or maybe even do ACLS drugs and some epinephrine or whatever, and you get the heart started again. You haven't fixed the problem that caused the arrest in the first place necessarily. It may be a huge heart attack. You haven't opened up that blood vessel for that heart, or it may be a bad acidosis. You haven't corrected that necessarily. Whatever caused it, maybe you started the heart again. That one organ is now doing this, but you haven't corrected the problem that caused it in the first place.
For real. So go learn about CPR so that then you can do it. And when something happens in front of you, you know how to handle it. And so you understand what happens with it, so you can decide what you want to happen to your own body and the bodies of the people you love, if you ever need to know. Excellent group.
Some other places, if cost is a hindrance for anyone, some libraries and community centers will have them for like way reduced fees.
Oh, sweet.
Like I've seen them for like $20, like that sort of thing. If cost is prohibitive, that might be another place to look.
That's a good point. I've even seen like our fire station will do it. Sometimes they'll host a class and they target it at like anyone can go, but they're usually targeting it at new parents, like so that you can learn these skills before your kid's born. But any of that, yes, perfect. We love it.
One last thing I want to say, M said something, in my experience, if you don't get an airway right away, CPR doesn't matter. And normally the classic CPR is 2 breaths, mouth to mouth, compressions. A lot of people don't want to do mouth to mouth with a stranger, and I understand that. I had to do that, and it was kind of weird. You can do CPR without mouth to mouth and without the airway. Just whatever oxygen is in the blood already, if you move that around, it's going to be better than nothing. But yeah, an airway is important too. And
you can buy those little masks too, the little packets. We used to get them from the Red Cross. And they're kind of cool little gifts to give out too. So you can just have those on a keychain, and then you're able to give quick.
You can give them out at parties.
They dropped someone off at the front of the hospital. So we came from the ER up to the front of the hospital. I was a nurse for about 2 years, I think, at the time. And it was this kid that overdosed. And I was like, okay, here we go. Or pumping. I'm like, because I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. He's a little bit foaming at the mouth. Anyway, but
you can get a pocket mask.
At the time.
Yes. And now you can get a pocket mask so that when you approach people at parties to tell them about the sad state of healthcare, for having this conversation with you, you can then be like, and when your family member dies in the hospital because there are not adequate staffing ratios, here is your CPR mask so that you do not need to touch their mouth with yours. Okay. My parting gift to you, my friend.
It's basically a kit. You get an EpiPen, you get a little Narcan, and you get your pocket mask.
I bet in those little neighborhood, if you live in suburbia and you've got a firehouse and you bring them some cookies, and you could say, hey, a couple of us would love to learn CPR. Can we come over one afternoon and you just kind of go over it with us? I bet they'd be like, yeah, sure. Because all we do is sit around, watching TV until we get a call, or polishing the fire truck. A lot of those small firehouses are just not that busy. I've been in them.
Yep.
And I would love to have you come over. And then, of course, if there's a call, they're going to have to leave. But come on over. We'll spend an hour, kind of go over it. We'll grab one of the mannequins out. And maybe it's not an official and you don't get a card, but, you make contact with your local fire department. They make contact with their community. And I bet in a small town, in a smaller town, I bet they'd be up for something like that. And you wouldn't have to pay for that. It would cost you a plate of cookies.
For real. Do it. It would be great. Are we ready for our next topic that I feel equally as passionate about? We have, we have CVS is now apparently being sued by a nurse practitioner who was fired because the nurse practitioner refused to provide birth control because of their religious beliefs. So CVS has these little minute clinics, right, that are basically like tiny urgent cares. They can handle a very narrow scope of things. One of those would be if you went in and you're like, hey, I need my birth control refilled. They could do that for you. They could diagnose sinus infections. They can do like sports physicals, like little basic things like that. And the so former CVS health nurse practitioner is suing the pharmacy chain for firing her after she refused to prescribe birth control, citing her religious beliefs. Texas resident said in the two that her Baptist faith prevents her from prescribing contraception and abortion-inducing drugs. Those are very different, and they didn't really specify that here. Contraception prevents a pregnancy from happening. Abortion ends it. She said that in 6.5 years, CVS granted her a religious accommodation for having to prescribe the drugs at the CVS Minute Clinic where she worked. When customers needed the prescription, she would refer them to a colleague or another CVS Minute Clinic. Usually at these Minute Clinics, there's only one of them. So I would find that pretty inappropriate if I went somewhere and then I said, well, I can't do that for you. So you're going to have to go all the way down here. And we'll talk about kind of the ethics of all of this in a second. And you can let me know in the comments because we might not agree. So she had been doing that, basically saying, if you needed this type of service, I don't do that, but you can go somewhere else, which is annoying. But in August 2021, CVS was revoking all religious accommodations, and her lawyer is basically saying that is illegal, citing Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, in which an employer cannot avoid accommodating a religious practice that could accommodate without undue hardship. So that's happening. What are our initial thoughts? And then I'll share mine. Should you be allowed to claim religious exemption from doing I'm not talking about abortion, from doing birth control and then Plan B, because those are both preventing a pregnancy. It's not actually ending one.
So I have two thoughts on this because I work in that very realm. An employer shouldn't be able to force you to do or not do something. And B, if you sign the contract already knowing this going into it, you signed the contract. So it's kind of two ends of the same stick, I guess. Adrienne could probably address that because she's the legal expert, but those are my thoughts.
Well, my opinion is that if you're not willing to do and execute all the duties of your job as in your role, then you should pick a different role. So
right.
this
you
would
signed
be
a contract.
like
So
this would be like I'm Seventh-day Adventist, I'm vegetarian, and so I'm not going to give heparin because it comes from pig guts. Are we doing that? No.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to point out there's a lot of there's a lot of other areas where we could say this and this could be used. And how would patients feel if, in advanced health hospitals, they didn't give heparin? So I think that there has to be some checks and balances about religious exemptions with, okay, well, let's look at these hospitals that are religious hospitals now, or facilities or organizations, right? Now, I worked in a Catholic hospital. We did not provide birth control. We were not allowed to even talk about contraception. And that was another reason I worked on telemetry. I worked with people that were well beyond that period of their life. So it didn't have to bother me. I probably would have been fired. But the other hospitals that were owned by our same company that had not originally been religious, had not been owned by the Catholic Church, they actually did abortive procedures, birth control procedures, and handed out birth control. So it was a little schizophrenic. So if I floated over to that hospital, I could talk about it. If I worked at my hospital that used to be owned by nuns, I couldn't. It makes no sense. But I do believe that there's a lot of other areas that this could apply to. But however, it's not. And why is it not? And I just think that there's a religious component, but it's kind of like, if you, who is it? Like if people take our conscientious objectors in the draft, right? Because their religion says, well, I can't, unalive anybody, right? Okay, well, that's a draft. You're not, okay, then you don't have to be in that service. Or you can go work and be a coder, be a nurse coder. You can be a case manager. You can do something else, some other role. But if you're not willing to execute your full role to your full capacity under your scope of practice, I have a big problem with that.
Yep.
I think it's interesting you use the word execute, but you'll still say unalive.
It's the
I don't know, 'cause
YouTubes.
I'm used to TikTok.
Yeah. It's the
They say
words we're not allowed
execute.
to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You will,
Yeah.
I think there was something about pharmacists in the same way, I think with like the Plan B. And it was the same kind of thing, that they have the right to refuse to participate in something that was against their deeply held religious beliefs. But then they had to make arrangements for that patient to get the services that they're requesting. They can't go around just being, the angel of life and making everyone stay pregnant or whatever. If that wasn't a huge burden to the patient. And so if you're the only, Walgreens in the middle of nowhere and someone comes in, you got to have you need a pharmacist in there that's going to dispense any medication that's prescribed, because the next one's far away. I kind of agree. You have the right not to participate in something that you don't want to do. And just because you have certain religious beliefs doesn't mean you can't be a good provider of healthcare, but it can't limit the healthcare that you provide. If you don't do it personally, you have to arrange for it to be done elsewhere. And I don't know how far around here, the next CVS is on the next block. So it would be around a problem here, but there it may be a
But
burden.
it also is, the burden is then putting it on the patient. It should be, where they need to accommodate people. I mean, again, it comes down to like, okay, what if you're a Christian Scientist and you say, well, I don't believe in anesthesia. I don't believe in pain medication. I don't actually, I'm going to be a nurse and go to work at a hospital, but I actually don't believe in medication. So where do we draw the line on that, right? If this is your job, then you have to be expected to execute your role, or you have to go into a different field or a different role that is compatible with your beliefs. Because I don't, again, if you're a Quaker, you're not going to be the executioner in the prison. Right?
So
transfusions.
I think the line we draw is it's a substantial portion of your work activity. So if you didn't give pain meds or anesthesia or any of the what would you do? What's left as a nurse if you're in that position? But as a pharmacist or as a nurse practitioner that doesn't give out one type of medication, you're still able to provide a vast majority of the services that you're contracted to do. And it does put upon the patient, but is it an undue burden on the patient? Balance that with the right of the practitioner to practice and still have the religious beliefs. Maybe it is undue if you make them drive an hour to get the pill, or to get whatever they're,
I mean, you don't know the age of that person. That could be a 15-year-old that they literally got away from their house for 10 minutes to run down the street to go get something. So again, when we get into reproductive health, we're talking, remember, this is the entire age span of who can give birth, right? And all those kind of things that could go into that or cause somebody to be pregnant or need that. And I just don't think there's room for it, because again, where does it end? And then it doesn't really have any validation. There's no validation for it actually in any religion.
Yep.
There is zero validation for these claims in any religion.
What do you mean by validation?
There's no proof. How against your religion? So where in any religion does it say?
In the Catholic Church, there are official Catholic teachings about these things. So if she said she was Catholic,
well, no, I understand that, but at the
one
same
thing,
time,
but
you're
Baptist,
still
I'm not sure
in
there's
these same. You're going to see in the Bible and old versions of the Bible the use of herbs and pennyroyal. What was pennyroyal used for? It was an abortive used in herbal medicine, right?
Well, we're talking about people's religious beliefs. You don't have to back it up with evidence-based research. It's what they believe is right and wrong in their heart.
Which makes it very dodgy. Then it makes it very dodgy, right? But again, then you get into, okay, it's my religious beliefs. I'm not going to take care of you as a gay person, so I'm going to not do that CPR. I'm going to leave you dying on the street. I'm going to leave you dying in the ER. I am the only nurse that can take care of you. I'm not going to provide you care. So again, that same nurse practitioner then, according to her religion, shouldn't be treating anybody who's LGBTQ also. So again, what percentage of the population is that? Well, now that's 10%. Well, do we not have slavery in the Bible, right? So again, do we not have all these other groups that we could add into certain religions? And I think that people need to do the job that they're hired to do. And if they go into a certain field, they need to be prepared to execute that job and perform their job. I mean, there's a lot of jobs you can do. You can do chart review as a nurse practitioner. You can teach. There's a lot of things you can do and be of value, but nobody inherently, there actually is no protection in the Constitution or any law that you have the right to do whatever job you want. There is no protection and no guarantee in any single law in the United States of America that guarantees that you have the right to do the job that you want, no matter what. Doesn't exist.
Another thing that makes this really odd to me, I totally agree that you need, if you're going to be in a certain profession, you need to be prepared to take care of any patient that comes in, do whatever needs to be done, or be prepared to look really hard for a job that will allow you those limitations. Okay.
Which will be like private practice.
Which would be chart review, which would be, something where whoever it is would say that that's okay because we don't do that here, or whatever it is. The other thing I always think is weird with this is people minding their own damn business, because religious beliefs are usually about what you do. You know, I believe it's wrong to use birth control, so I'm not going to take birth control. I believe abortion is murder, so I'm not going to have an abortion. And maybe with some of these, like with abortion, you don't want to be any part of that. But as far as like other people like taking PrEP or other people taking the pill, you don't have any moral responsibility for what they do just because you hand them the pill. They're going to get it from someone else anyway. I don't think people think through that, and they think, I mean, I understand they want to kind of build a wall around it, and I don't want to get anywhere near it. But some of these things, it's not about whether or not you condone a gay lifestyle, whatever the hell that is, by giving PrEP to prevent HIV infection. You're providing I just don't understand how people confuse what's right and wrong for their own lives, with what they do and don't do as it affects other people's lives and the decisions that they make independently.
Yeah, I agree. Your religious beliefs affect what you do in your own body, not what other people are allowed to do with theirs. And I don't understand how we get that confused at all. I feel very passionately about this because I was a nurse practitioner in North Carolina, and people used this excuse for everything. Like Scott, you were saying, my patient population was very interesting in primary care because I had all the people coming to me for like PrEP because no one would give it to them because they said, I don't agree with what you're doing or why you need that because you're gay. And it was literally them being like, well, I don't condone that, which is like the most condescending, like, who cares what you condone? You're not there to be their pastor. You're there to be their healthcare provider, which means you give them whatever is safe and is something that they need. And it makes me so angry when people use this as a way to just be bigoted, because that's what this is at the end of the day, right? CVS is not telling her she needs to take birth control. They're saying, this is something we offer, and we offer it to everyone who walks into our doors. And here's where we are. If you don't want to do that, then you need to find a different job. Okay. Because it's just, you don't get to decide what other people do with their own body. And I don't understand why people feel entitled and think that they can get a different job.
I art holier than thou, so I will make thy decision for thee.
Yes. Like, get a different job. I worked with a nurse when I worked at the bedside who ended up losing her job eventually because she refused to do, take care of men essentially because of her religious beliefs. She did not think that she should make a naked male body was essentially what it was. Well, the hospital, and then it ended up turning into like a lawsuit because she was saying, well, you're violating my religious beliefs. And the hospital ended up winning, saying like, then you shouldn't have gotten an inpatient job where half of your population is male. Like, this isn't going to work. Like they tried, and they had to find her a different job, basically in a clinic where you wouldn't have to do anything like that. But like, if you work in healthcare, like, don't take jobs where you disagree with a portion of what you have to do. No one is forcing you into a job where you prescribe birth control. If you want to be a villain, go work in a private practice setting where you can kind of decide what you want to do. And I just say villain because if you're making decisions about other people based on your religious beliefs, you're a villain, in my opinion. But if you want to do that, like, go find a different medium. You know what I mean? That's why all those private practices existed where I lived, because those people knew they couldn't stand up in their own healthcare systems and say, I'm not going to give you this because I disagree with it. Those healthcare systems were like, no, like, you are going to give people things that are going to save their lives. And if you don't want to do that, you can go open your own office. And a lot of them did. And it was very telling and very sad.
The difference is, I think, when you are actually performing a procedure on a person. So if you're performing an abortion, then that's the act that is considered immoral by some religious beliefs. And so if you don't believe in that, you shouldn't be forced to do that just because it's part of the job. It's what we do here. I can't imagine a situation where that would be true. But if you don't believe in that, of course, you don't want to be part of that. You don't want to assist in that. And the plan B is kind of a gray area because it doesn't end a pregnancy, but it prevents implantation. And for some people, that's very, very close. The abortion pill, if there are, I'm not up to date on this yet, but the abortion pills that are actually given to the mifepristone and some of those, it will cause a miscarriage. You shouldn't have to do that as a provider, but if you get a job in a clinic where that's what they do on a regular basis, you should have known better. But there's a difference between giving a medication is going to cause, as you see it, the death of a fetus, or doing a procedure, and handing someone birth control pills or a condom for that matter, or a plan B to prevent implantation before there's even a pregnancy established. There's a difference to me.
Yep.
And the providers that don't want to participate in that need to be respected. But that's very specific. That's having an effect on the patient, not just providing them with materials, or medication.
And I think this
clear. It's not a clear. It's a very kind of muddy issue. But I hope I made that clear.
Yeah. And I think this comment says it well. You're supposed to be a provider to all people, not just whatever they want to pick and choose. And that's literally what your job is, especially as a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, a physician, that is, you are like a menu, and you literally explain, these are what all your options are. I'm not going to tell you that I hate cheese and you shouldn't eat anything with cheese. I'm not going to omit cheese from my menu because I personally believe it will send me straight to hell. I'm going to tell you of all the options, and I'm going to tell you this is what the pros and the cons and the risks and the benefit of all of them are. And then here you go. You may choose it. And it's unethical to just hide a chunk of the menu because it doesn't suit your fancy, and then make them go to a different place because you don't know, that might seem like, oh, well, it's not a huge inconvenience. No, they came here for a service that place offers. And if you don't want to work somewhere that offers that, then don't work there.
The other side of this is, as I think we said in the LGBTQ issues in healthcare panel discussion last year, as you're shopping for doctors and you think you might need something like hormones for transition or birth control, even birth control, which is not an LGBTQ issue.
I love cheese.
Yeah.
I know the need to clarify. Sorry.
If you're thinking about going to a clinic, call ahead and say, does your provider there offer PrEP? Do they offer birth control? Or is there any reason why I couldn't get birth control from this provider? Is there any reason I couldn't get a referral to endocrinology for gender transition or gender affirming therapy? And then let them tell you, yeah, we don't do that. Our doctor doesn't do that. He doesn't believe in it. She doesn't believe in it. And then you're like, okay, good. I don't waste my time there. I'll go somewhere else.
Yep. And this I know it probably seems like I'm being in all things dramatic, but having work, I never realized this was the issue that it was, and that there was so much discrimination against people until I lived there. I also would have a lot of, and this wasn't just for things like PrEP. It was for things like, I had a lot of people come to me because they didn't know the health department existed, but they couldn't get STI screenings because people wouldn't give them STI screenings if they weren't married. They're like, well, you shouldn't need that. And they wouldn't order it. And they didn't know that the health department existed to go and get tested. Wow. So this is something that does happen a lot. Well,
those are the people that live in that big river in Egypt. What's the name of that big river in Egypt? Anyway, people are going to have sex. Married or not, it's going to happen. We have to be able to deal with whatever fallout that comes with that. STIs and the treatment, pregnancy and the treatment, whatever. It's going to happen.
In nursing, you cannot go into this. You cannot be a sheltered little individual and go into nursing. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things going to happen when you go to nursing school. Your mind is going to open up to all the different types of people in the world, and you don't have to embrace it and become an LGBTQ ally, but you have to be willing to take care of these people, interact and touch these people, because these are your patients. If you have racial issues, you're going to have to get to the point where you can at least provide services to these groups that maybe you're not as comfortable with. And nursing's not for everybody. If you can't get past that, then you need to be doing your work at Chili's. I don't know, do something else. There's plenty of good jobs that you can do.
Don't go work at Chili's if you want to stay. No, that's not the place for you.
And just
if you are.
to clarify, the premise and the impetus for Title VII and that language about religion was to give people, and again, it applies to employers with over 15 employees, unless your state provides for greater protection. But it was so that people could practice their religion, right? And again, so then you get into some issues in a hospital environment, a 24/7 business. Well, does everybody get Sundays off? Well, who's going to staff? So you don't see lawsuits about, I want Sunday off in a Catholic hospital, right? You don't see this happening. So again, people are picking and choosing, but the EEOC enforcement of Title VII, this was about religious practices, not about, I don't want to do this in my job. That was really not, as far as I know of the history of this in 1964 and in the years, leading up to the act being approved, was not really part of the thinking that there would be things that people were religiously opposed to. The only thing that anybody really had on their radar was conscientious objectors, in wartime, more or less. But so it was more so like, I need Yom Kippur off. I need to have time to pray. I mean, it wasn't even an issue about Muslims, right? Back then, that wasn't even a population that was significant in this country. This was, about, do I have time off to practice my religion and accommodation? But at the same time, we don't see 24/7 operations and businesses being sued left and right and taken to the Supreme Court because they're not giving Sunday off or Saturday off or whatever. But let's say Sunday is the main kind of religious day for in the United States for Christians, right? We don't see that. So again, it's this picking and choosing, because you would think that is the number one issue. I get to have Sundays off because, trust me, people tried to pull that in my hospital and came to the union and we were like, the hell no. Like, that's, I'm not working every Sunday because they're like, well, you're a Buddhist, you can work Sunday. And it's like, well, that's none of your business what my religion is, or if I'm atheist, or, what I practice. So, but again, if 70-80% of the people in my hospital were probably Christian, I'm assuming, again, wasn't an issue. Few people made it an issue, but, they had to work that out.
Yep.
Yeah, and you wouldn't see this kind of thing with other instances. Like if you have somebody that wrecks their car because they were speeding down the road, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to treat this trauma patient because I don't condone speeding. It's like, well, hang on a second. You can't just not treat them because you don't agree with what they did.
Good point. Yeah.
There's a lot of just squiggly stuff, and it's like, yeah, this doesn't line up anywhere else in any field anywhere. It's like this. It just seems wrong.
Can you imagine in the ER if we decided we're not going to treat this because you brought this on yourself? We'd be out of business.
Yeah. Really slow nights.
The 4th of July would become very boring.
And
all of the
aside from the ethics, just you feel that way. Sometimes it's like, you go out and you use the drugs and you get, overdose again, and we try to get you treatment, you don't go, and you just keep doing this, or alcoholics, especially chronic alcoholics, and you're just like, and you keep coming to us, we have to keep giving you the IV fluids and keep saving your ass, and you're doing it to yourself. But you know what? That's what we signed up for. And it gets frustrating that they don't want to help themselves, but you know what? That's what we signed up for.
And that is what we signed up for once. When the world thinks we signed up for everything else, I'm like, no, literally, I signed up to help all people. Like, not to get beat up while I do it, or to, become a martyr. That's like the only time I think we've ever appropriately used. This is what I signed up for. But those people might not always think that. They're like, no, not what I signed up for.
There was a case religious. So California is actually very strict about this. It's interesting. So there is a little bit of a higher bar because there is some court cases that have said, well, you don't have to have an express religious scripture or something stating something overtly for it to be considered a religious belief. But there was a case about a vegan in California, and that person lost. And that was with, I think it was Kaiser. Yeah, that employees veganism is not a religious belief. Right? So again, but then what constitutes a religion? I can go start a church, right? I mean, it's really subjective. So I think that these things are, there's been a lot of rulings on this. The California Labor Blog has a lot of good resources on this issue, but I just believe, like, in practical matters, if you're going to be, again, it's easy if we're in a bigger city, but again, maybe not. Maybe there's not the kind of specialist. But if you're in rural health and you're in Alabama, you're in an indigenous, a tribal health care facility, and then you are the only person, you are it. No, it's just, that's why it just is, to me, not acceptable. It's not a gray area. It's like, you either do that job or you don't do that job.
Mhm.
You go be a plumber, you go do chart review, you go teach students, be an electrician, do something else. You don't have a right. And I think that this is something that is really interesting. It hasn't really been brought in to the legal system, is, do you have a right to have any job you want and practice your job the way you see fit, especially if you have a license, versus is it negligence? Because this is interesting, because a board could still charge you with negligence.
Mm-hmm.
Your licensing board they don't give a crap. They're not bound to any law. They can still charge you with negligence. So there's some interesting facets, here.
Well, if we use the Hippocratic Oath as the touchstone for our industry here, and it's been a while since I've read it, so somebody please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember ever reading or hearing about the Hippocratic Oath. I swear to only treat white, straight men that are Christian. I don't
You didn't
remember
read that part?
I could be wrong. Could be mistaken, but I
It's
don't
in
remember that
bold
being
on mine, like with
Look,
glitter around
I
it.
think it just said I was going to treat people and not cause harm. So, like I said, I could be wrong.
And big feelings. Do we have anything else to say about this? And then we'll go into our palate cleanser before we approach our last topic. Yes.
I saw you highlighted Sandy's comment.
Oh, Sandy. Yes, I think either Rachel or I. As an RN educator, we teach our students not to be biased. It's very hard to not be biased also. I would say this is something that took me a long time as a nurse to be much less biased, because I think, was it you, Scott, that was saying, like, if you go into this, like, you are, this is not the field for you if you are going to be unwilling to be open to learning new things and realizing everything you thought about everything is kind of wrong. And you're going to have to reevaluate. I went into it not even knowing I was biased. I was very biased. I went and worked on a unit that was primarily drug and alcohol related complications of liver failure, a lot of things that were happening. It was very eye-opening, and you learn a lot about people, and then everyone's life is not like yours, and people are not inherently evil for different choice. Like, you just learn a lot. You recognize a lot of your biases very quickly. So I think it's good we teach it in school, but also I think it's hard to only teach it in school. You know what I mean? Like, you have to go and, like, live it. We keep our opinions to ourselves. However, as labor and delivery nurse, I do have my right at my hospital to refuse elective terminations. And since I don't care for those terminating, I care for those with a fetal demise, and we take turns with those special situations. I think this particular one topic is very different than the rest of everything, right? There are certain procedures that are going to be much more, because that is just different, and we can't categorize it with anything else.
I like this. It's an
Mhm.
example of where she found a place that did not place undue burden on any patient. They all got nursing care, but they were able to accommodate her ethical beliefs and her religious beliefs and things like that.
Mhm.
And it works. You've got a group of nurses that will trade off like this, and it works, and that's fine. The problem with the CVS NP and the pharmacist is, if there's nobody else around, then it puts out the patient is put out by it.
Exactly.
I'm glad that she
Mhm.
was able to do both. We have to find that balance.
Yeah, for sure.
If I can find another provider to trade assignments with, because that would make us all more comfortable, great. If I can't, I still got to care for the patient.
Yep. And I think that's what it came down to, was the issue there. Exactly, Scott, that they were the only one, and having them go somewhere else is not, just no.
And was it known? I mean, I think it's also like, these things have to be known. You can't trick your employer, right? You need to make it known, like, hey, by the way, this is what I believe in. Is that going to be acceptable? Because again, are you giving the employer the opportunity to, make that match, whether it's a religious issue or not? But, I'm just curious, this person worked at CVS for a while, didn't they?
Yeah, and they accommodated it. And then they decided as a company in 2021 that they were no longer going to
I see.
accommodate all of the religious exemptions of people saying, well, I'm not going to do that because it's against my whatever.
But then that's the company flipping the script.
And that in that situation
and that's not fair either.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be, but again, if there's pressure to bear on the company. So again, CVS is also getting into, they are moving into a different arena of healthcare. They are becoming a big player in healthcare. I'm just going to be curious how it all plays out, because CVS gives heaps and heaps of money to both sides of the aisle. They support a lot of things that aren't always the best things. And so I'll be interested to see how this plays out. But to have, a CVS lawyer argue this case, if it goes to the Supreme Court, this will be very interesting, because for the Supreme Court to rule, if they rule against in favor of, I don't see the Supreme Court doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
CVS will pull all of its, they will just pull their lobby money away from Republicans. They will just be like, see you later, Republicans. Bye.
And
because they donate a lot of money. We're millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And they own one of the big insurance companies. I forget which one.
Mm-hmm.
Fun.
It's a big deal.
Isn't it
Very
Health
fun.
Mart?
I couldn't tell you. I thought it was Aetna or something, but I don't want to say.
I think it is Aetna, because I have Aetna and we have to use CVS. Otherwise, we can't get prescription drug, which makes me very angry because I liked my little pharmacist. And now we can't use them unless we want to pay out of pocket, because they were like, oh, you have to use us. Evil.
Yeah.
Evil.
Yeah, it's
Demons.
the Barnes and Nobling of healthcare pharmacies, right? It's putting all the small pharmacies out of business. CVS and Walgreens.
If I can jump in real quick for the pharmacy thing. If your insurance company says, hey, you have to use this pharmacy or this brand of pharmacy, you can always tell the insurance company, no, I do not want to use that one. And depending on which insurance company it is, they'll actually let you use a different one.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm going to go do that.
Not always. For a couple of
the
different ones I worked with, they did let us do that. We'd let the patient know, hey, if you want to still use us, just call the insurance company and say, no, I do not want to use, pharmacy X company. I want to use my old one. They go, okay, that's fine. And then they would pay for it. But you have to bring it up. They won't prompt you.
It sounds like a lot of things. They tell you no first. And then you're like, please. They're like, okay, just for you.
But I'll go fight. That's helpful, Matt. Thank you.
Do that.
And if that fails,
depending on your policy, though, they can make you pay more if they have a preferred provider system.
Yeah.
But it never hurts to ask. And it is Aetna with CVS.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Thanks. Well, that's very helpful. I would pay a few more dollars for my cute little pharmacist.
You can always just fake a seizure or an anaphylactic reaction to say you're allergic to something inside CVS. They wear perfume. I've refused to go to certain doctors and because of perfume of the staff, because I've had 7 anaphylactic reactions, and I'm like, nope, not coming back. You have to send me somewhere else. I'm not going to see this doctor because they're staff perfume.
Don't wear scents if you work in healthcare. I will never understand.
And don't fake seizures.
Never. We never, ever, never do that. Okay, palate cleanser, and then we'll go through our last topic really quickly. Because
Austin's got a good palate cleanser there.
Oh, perfect. I'm ready. Let me see. Thanks, Austin. I just want to thank all of you, especially Liz, Mr. Midwife, Scott, and Adrian. I've been watching this channel for about a year now, and you're all incredibly inspiring. And thank you for these lives. Oh, you're welcome. And let me know, guys, if you like this more. I'm going to bring up a bunch of random topics, and then we can just discuss them format. I've had fun, but let me know if you, because you have to watch it. Otherwise, the YouTube doesn't like me. But I think it's kind of fun and an interesting way to touch on a bunch of different things. I do want to keep it around 2 hours though, so we'll do the palate cleanser really quick, and then we'll hop into the last point, which is really just something to make you more mad. It's not something we really need to discuss. So if you guys in the chat, Mr. Midwife also had a good idea of if you have any questions for anyone on the panel, we can always round up by doing some at the end. So if you have a question for a particular human on the panel, do let us leave it just like right question. And then we'll do a few at the end. And they can share their expertise. We have like labor and delivery, ER. Adrian knows everything. So just address everything else to her.
We love Adrian.
Matt is like pharmacy, EMS, all of those things. And Mel, what kind of questions can we direct at your way?
Patient advocacy stuff, public health, and lots of experience as a patient.
There we go.
Current grad entry MSN mode.
Okay, so Mel does everything too. So it's fine. It's fine. Everything is great. And I did peds. That's in primary care. Okay, palate cleanser. Briefly, did you hear about the nurse that got fired for toast? Because this happened. They've now taken it back. Quebec nurse was suspended for eating a piece of toast. So I don't know about you, but if when I worked in the hospital, I could make a very impressive meal out of things I found in the kitchen. Like, the different types, you can make like a peanut butter and jelly with sandwich with crackers and then the peanut butter and the different types of jellies. And then you could combine the jellies. There was a whole lot of things that you could do. You could mix and match like the different types of beverages. There's a lot of options. Quebec did not think so. There was a 3-day suspension. The nurse got suspended, and I think she was initially told she was going to get fired, and then they backed off on that, for eating a slice of toast with peanut butter on it while on duty. It's been rescinded as the measure was realized to be too severe for the act committed. So we have that.
We can't pee. We can't take a drink of water. Now we can't even eat toast.
You may not.
How are we supposed to survive a 12-hour shift?
Well, that's not their problem. Do not eat toast.
Good night.
So that's fun and exciting and something to look forward to if you live in Quebec, that you might get fired for eating toast. What was your favorite? Does anyone have a favorite concoction that they like to make out of?
Orange juice and pineapple juice mixed.
Perfect. Would you add a dash of cranberry for color?
That possibly.
Okay. We accept.
Ginger ale and cranberry.
Yes. Yes.
Sprite and cranberry.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had really ghetto snacks. We had 2 beverages, like graham crackers, regular crackers, not peanut butter, maybe some applesauce. Then they took that away. And then we were like, how do we, give meds to some of our patients? Yeah, no, it was very, very minimal. And then our sister hospital had like abundance of really good snacks. So
yeah, they don't give us much in the ER.
They actually,
how many shifts I survived on a carton of milk and a turkey sandwich in the med room. Just
yeah. They started giving the sandwiches, and then that was, we were like, whoa. But yeah, at one point they actually made this like edict in our hospital that anybody who like drank or ate anything would be fired. And I think I was on a leave of absence or something, and I came back and they were like, oh, you better be careful, like don't drink any because I don't even drink soda and I don't drink juice, but I would just get so dehydrated. I would always, grab the ginger ale and just guzzle it.
Yes.
But, so of course I had to push the line on that. And just the minute the DON came around, I had to run to the kitchen and grab a drink and pop it open in front of her. And
inevitably,
while wrapped up in your warm blanket.
While I was in the warm blanket. Yes. Yes.
The coveted warm blankets. How dare you use them?
Inevitably, the kitchen brings up one tray for the patients that's been discharged, and we all scavenge off that because
I have been.
I got dibs on this dessert. I got dibs on the pudding with a little dab of whipped cream.
Wait, when I worked in informatics, I had like the carte blanche pass to the hospital, so I could get in. I don't think there was anywhere I couldn't get in. Maybe the CEO's office. Like literally, I had the pass for everything, and I had the pass to get into all the doctors' lounges at both hospitals. Like I had no idea what was going on in doctors' lounges. I was like,
what goes on in doctors' lounges?
I mean, I had no idea. The
Don't
food, the buffets, the Wall Street Journals deliver. There's New York Times. There's newspapers. There's like massage chairs.
Every once in a while, one of the docs would come from like the Friday grand rounds or whatever and bring us the leftover big, plates with the sandwiches and the crudité and all that. Every once in a while, they think of us in the ER.
Yeah.
It was like EMS rooms right next to the ER usually. Some of them have really good snacks and some of them have the worst snacks. It's like, that's been there like 6 months and nobody's taken it because it's just terrible.
Yeah.
I
There's a
used to
reason
go
it's every
in
6 months.
when I would work late in informatics because I worked very long hours, and then I'd go in late and I would pillage the doctor's lounge and then just like bring like this huge amount over to the ER.
You're the Robin Hood of snacks.
Uh-huh.
I was like, they're gonna, because I knew when they were gonna throw everything out and all the fruit, and I mean, they had like, all the
They
candies.
had fruit?
They had fruit. They had every kind of candy you
Wow.
could imagine, just in bowls. And I was like, they're not going to eat all this stuff. There's not going to be doctors here this weekend. They hardly come around.
Dang.
And if you didn't know, when you bring food to the ER and it goes into the break room, it's there for about 10 minutes and it's gone. I don't care what it is, it's gone.
Yes.
Especially if the
So as a
EMTs are
patient-
hanging out.
As a patient
Chelsea's
about to
telling
get
a story.
discharged, I may have found out nurses' favorite prepackaged foods at times and
You're
ordered
my
them,
favorite.
knowing the tray would come as I was leaving or after I left.
That
Yeah,
you're
it's
the,
a
you're the
You're a
hero.
good person.
Jones or Nutter
You are the
Butters.
unsung
Good
hero.
stuff.
Yep.
The good stuff.
I have had several patients in my lifetime who would order things that they knew I liked. Like they did not like the chocolate cake, but they would order me the chocolate. They were like, Liz, are you here till you're here all night? And I'm like, yes, I'm here all night. They're like, I'm just going to order dinner. Okay. And then like, there would just be cake there. And they were like, I'm not going to eat that, but I haven't even opened it. And I was like, well, I could probably help you with that problem.
Totally did that.
Uh-huh. You're the best and we appreciate you. I've even had situations where patients, I usually I would bring my own lunch, but I knew other nurses who would if you came in and got admitted in the middle of the night in our hospital, they had packaged lunches that you could sometimes get in the kids' hospitals, not for adults. Adults, they were like, have a cracker. But the kids, for the parents and stuff, you could get a little lunchbox. And I've known many nurses who were literally, they're like, are you hungry? Would you like a lunchbox? And the person's like, no. And they're like, would you like it to be turkey? And they were like, I don't really care. And they're like, I'll write down turkey. They're like, I don't really want to eat. They're like, don't even worry about this conversation. I'll just take it. It's fine. Chelsea has a story
Did you
for
see this?
us.
Oh, God.
An unspecified amount of time ago, I witnessed the most disgusting thing that I have ever seen. I saw a visitor come out of a patient room. Sorry, they came out. They went up to the dirty tray cart and picked off people's leftovers. This person knew we had sandwiches in our fridge, but decided to eat off of the other patient's dirty trays instead.
Oh, no. Bad.
This
Hey
is the
man, when
gross-
you're starving,
This is the grossest thing Chelsea's ever seen, and we all know what Chelsea does for a living.
Chelsea,
horrifying.
you got to get a new job if that's the grossest thing we've ever seen. Come on, honey. Our department's pretty nasty some days.
That's kind of bad. This may be someone who normally dumpster dives, and this was a step up.
Hey,
Oh my gosh.
you don't know. You don't
No,
know.
I don't know. I
Thank
just
you.
think
Get
of
'em
all
all.
the different things that patients have, and it's like,
Yeah.
no,
So
no.
here's on the
it's
on the
warm.
topic of food. If you are a patient in a hospital, only offer prepackaged sealed food to
Yes.
healthcare workers, and
Yes, we're very skeptical.
there's also an unspoken rule: if it's been in your room overnight, it won't be touched. And so, yeah, I would always work Super Bowl Sunday because I don't really care about football. And people would always have these big spreads. Like patients would have big spreads, and I'd just be like, yeah, no, sorry, no.
It was always the people who were in with C. diff too, and their family brought you things. They're like,
Right.
thank you so much for caring for my family. And I'm like,
Right.
you're
Bring it
welcome.
down to
I
the
appreciate
ER.
the
We'll
call.
eat it. We're like, you
Hey,
come
give
in
me
for
the
a
cookies.
shift, and come in for a shift. You're like, how long has this been here?
Uh-huh.
I'm sure I'm immune to whatever's in here. I've been exposed to everything.
I'll be like, but I'll take a dish down to the ER.
Oh, the immunity levels.
Hepatitis A, it's what's for dinner.
Has
And
an
then
extra
we all-
zing to all your meals.
Oh shit!
We all then wonder why we all have norovirus. We're like, wow, why are we all of a sudden all barfing? This is weird.
We have a sick
Unknown.
sense of humor, do we not?
So yes, we have that situation. You can also, fun fact, in desperate situations, you can microwave applesauce just a little bit to get it warm and pour it over ice cream. And it's kind of like sad cobbler.
Mhm.
It's not the best, but if it's been a day and it's 3 a.m., and you're just like, I just need.
And the little ice creams in the little styrofoam packs. If that's too hard, you can't get the spoon in it. You put it in the microwave. I believe it was for 7 seconds.
Yep. And Irene says orange juice and vanilla Ensure. I'm here for it. Kind of like a creamsicle. We've got it.
Yeah, I was
This is
lucky
good.
enough that there was a large percentage of Filipino nurses at my hospital, and I can definitely attest that the night shift did not go hungry. I would stay over quite often from day shift. I never worked nights. I'd be like, sure, I'll work extra. I'll stay till 1 a.m. and be like, like who's bringing pancetta? Right? I mean,
Pot stickers.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Food culture is huge in nursing, if you can't tell. We love potlucks. Just please. Yes. And we don't really have time to eat them. So then you just kind of swing by and then like take a random scoop out of a crock pot and hope for the best.
It's a little like the feeding scene out of G.I. Jane when she's at the camp, when they're in they eat all the food, they dump it in the trash, then they get out and then they have to go through the trash and eat all the food.
Then there's such shade when people like Adrian come in from a different unit and just like swoop in on your poor potluck, and then she takes it back to wherever she came from. There's always like random people who are like, I'm like a CSR nurse, so I kind of like fill in on all these units, so I know all of you, and they'll just come down like magically. Like I don't know what.
I'm looking for the bladder scanner. Oh, yeah, you're having a potluck.
A potluck. Oh my god. Do you have extra batteries for the phones? Look at this. Wow.
The nurses, some of the Filipino nurses had they had such great, spectacular potlucks. I mean, we'd come in off work. We'd be like, oh, let's, get the message. You live close to the hospital.
Yep. I'm going to return your pen that I stole 3 months ago. Oh, wow. Look at that. That's a very nice spread you have laid out there. I think I will take some. I think I will. Okay. And so now that we've had our palate cleanser, we're going to end. This one's not a huge one for discussion. We'll just leave you with this little nugget of corporate greed because my husband sent it to me and I was like, well, that makes me mad. I'll get everyone else mad, just as mad as I am. And we're not talking about what this, like the contents of it, like what if you should get this shot or not. But did you see that the Moderna COVID vaccine? So this is like jumping in price like crazy. So this was something that was funded. The government gave these people billions of dollars to develop this vaccine with a B. And they used it. Now they're saying, well, since we had to pay so much, even though they didn't have to pay anything because it was literally, they got billions of dollars, they're going to make the price of it go up like a lot. I think, what did it say? Like 400%. It used to be like $25. Now it's going to be like $130 or something. I mean, I think that a number of these being administered is going to tank. So I think they're trying to recoup their, keep the money that they're making the same. But this is why we have struggles. And then the company is saying, well, it's not going to matter because if you want to get this and you have insurance, your insurance company is going to pay for it. Well, then if we're handing the price over to the insurance company, and then the insurance company is going to be like, well, I still want to make the same money. So our insurance deductibles and stuff are just going to go up. And this is why we have problems. Okay. This is why we have problems. Does anyone have anything to say about this and how they're just mean and greedy?
We're all doomed.
Yes.
I just want to remind everybody that the patent for insulin was sold for $1 because the inventors of insulin believed it belonged to the people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That didn't work out too good.
That didn't work out very well at all. And this is kind of a good example of what goes on all over in healthcare, like with insulin. This happens all the time. All the time. This is particularly infuriating because all of their research was funded. So they didn't actually have to pay. All their excuses are always like, well, like the amount of research and development that we had to put into this product is like, we're just trying to recoup our costs. My dude.
Yeah.
My dude.
I was just the other night, the little presentation we had with the nurse practitioners group was on X-linked hypophosphatemia, which affects about 15,000 patients in the US. So it's not a lot. And it's one of these drugs that they've developed that ends in MAB. So, it's expensive. And we actually asked, and kids get it every 2 weeks. Adults get it every 4 weeks as a shot. We asked them how much it costs. They're like, we don't know. They wouldn't even tell the rep. We looked it up on Hippocrates at the time. We're like, what is it? Oh, pricing not available. That means if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But
Yep.
of course, they have those programs where if you need it, we'll work with you and this and that, whatever. I looked it up when I got home. It's $20,000 a dose.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So no one's paying out of pocket for this.
But then that's also handed right back to your insurance costs.
Or Medicaid or Medi-Cal.
Yep.
Yeah. All those payers. Yeah.
Yep.
But again, I'm sure it costs a lot of money to develop. I don't know enough about it, but I know that my concern is, does the patient have to pay for it? And of course, indirectly, I guess they do, but.
And who has access to it? Because if you don't have insurance, then you're not even going to have access to that at all.
Yeah, and then you're kind of doomed.
Well, they do have the program sometimes where they'll help you pay and, whatever. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
So that's where we are. I just needed to leave you with something depressing. And there we found it. Corporate greed is involved in our healthcare system very intimately, and it's the worst relationship ever. And my goal in life is to have them break up. So I'd like to see that marriage dissolve, and they can get together with all of us. It'd be a very
That's right.
progressive relationship. We're no longer there just trying to make money, but we're all just trying to benefit here. This is an indicative problem in our society, just pure greed. No one cares about their fellow humans. Problem. We're going to solve it though, because you're all going to go to parties and you're going to tell people, hello, did you know that at the latest, the state of healthcare, we've done great thing for nursing things. So this week you can go to your parties and rage about how the prices of things like vaccines are crazy high. Compliment the nurses, let them know that this happened, and tell them that if they know any, they should also, try to get the same deals happening here, and then give them their CPR valve mask. Okay. That's what we're going to do this week. That's our homework. Any questions for our panel people before we leave? Funding more pointless middle management to run the company and maximize bonuses. Yes. Sandy says, for Adrian and Mr. Midwife, why are PSAs standard for men, but CA 125s are not standard for women?
Because men run the insurance companies.
That's a great answer.
I concur.
That's why.
I concur.
It is so hard to get some of these. Some of the testing I do, pap smears, STD testing, so on and so forth, it's just not covered by insurance. I don't know why.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of our healthcare research is on, like you said, it's on dudes, that now we're realizing like almost all heart attack research is on dudes. That's why we know the symptoms of a heart attack is, pain down your left arm, crushing pain like an elephant sitting on you. It's not the symptoms for most women. Usually they're having like a stomach ache and like just feeling tired and off, but we didn't study women. A lot of things happen like that. So there's just a lot less research, and the people who are paying for it are going to be more protective probably of their parts. So yeah. And white dudes, especially. We're not studying all dudes. No. That was also in their code of ethics. Thou must be.
Some fine print there at the bottom.
Yeah. No, we don't like that.
Yeah, just look up the, why were chainsaws invented, and that will tell you quite a bit.
Joe just sent me that article. It's very creepy that you just told me that, because I don't even know if I can pull this up on the internet. But if you look up, what article was it?
Pretty crazy.
Look up history here. We won't show pictures because I was
just
like,
go get this book. Get that book.
I am nauseous.
Buy this book. It's super thin. It's 50 years old. There's no other book like this. And Barbara Ehrenreich wrote about a lot of workers. She wrote about working class.
I am not a witch.
That's right. The history of how men as doctors took over women's health from midwives.
Chainsaws were used to basically just saw through pelvises.
Oh my God in heaven. I did not know that.
Yep. That's what my husband was like, show this to your panel.
That's not
and
part
then
of midwifery school.
He was like, make Chad and Chelsea react to this.
Well, when you start to read what they were doing before that, they were just chipping away, and the women that were experimented on, the history of like Asperger, Dr. Asperger. There's so much fascinating. It's crazy.
Well, we used to experiment on black women because they don't feel pain,
Right. And a lot of that was borrowed. So a lot of what the Nazis did actually came out of American research. Read about Asperger's.
God, I did not
Very
know
interesting.
that. Jesus.
There was a Star Trek episode that took this on not long ago that I saw about, do we benefit from the knowledge gained from those unethical experiments? Like in World War II, of course, this was specialized in outer space, but same kind of thing. And, is it wrong? Does it validate the method by benefiting from that? And I didn't understand that episode because I'm like, the best way we could honor the people that were experimented on is to make their death worth something. It's a complete opposite of what they were like. I don't want to benefit from that technology because they're, no, I think it's the other way.
Well, still acknowledging that it was horrific. Yeah,
exactly.
And, like, so that this never, ever, ever happens again.
Right. But to deny, like, say, well, I'm not going to use this, technique.
You can't unlearn things that were learned. I mean, you can't get rid of that public information.
We absolutely learned the information we gleaned from this Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah, exactly.
Could we ever design another study like that? God, I hope not. But we did learn something from it, and so
and to say we're not going
to let their death mean something. So at least that.
Yeah.
Plus, not to use knowledge that you already have, I think, is unethical too, no matter where it came from.
Right.
But that I did not know that about the chainsaw. That is,
I did not know that
either.
They're all
right after this.
Sternal saw for cardiac surgery. I mean, you have to cut through bone, but that seems a bit
And this was like way before anesthesia, when they might have just handed you some like rum.
This is the 1800s. This is 1860.
Yeah, like been like, good luck.
This is right.
Okay, that just completely changed my mental image of this.
This is about breech babies, and this is, also, I mean, I don't know right now or this year, or the last 5 or 10 years, but childbirth is still the number one cause of death of women around the world and has been for hundreds of years. On another final note, it's very interesting, like some now of the research that discoveries about surgeries done by some ancient cultures in Latin America, South America, Central America, dating back 5,000, 10,000 years. It's pretty crazy, like brain surgeries, right? Cranium surgeries. So there's some, it's a whole topic. Maybe we'll do a topic on history of crazy inventions and unethical things done. Or there's a lot of topics to do to educate people.
I've always wondered why you have to take a history class in school. It's always, first of all, it's European centric, but it's always it's geopolitical. It's what countries fought other country, who won what war. Why don't we learn the history of
seriously?
Science,
there's a lot of cool stuff. But it's all remember this date, remember this date, remember this.
And
date.
a lot of it's disgusting. So Scott, I agree. They would pay attention if it was gross. Like I might have listened, you know what I mean? Like a lot of it's really nasty. And if you were telling me what like old famous person like got what kind of venereal disease, I'd be a lot more interested into whatever you were talking about. I'd be like, okay, and how did they treat that? No, thank you. And they gave it to the queen of who? Interesting. Okay. Don't tell me about a war. Like we're approaching.
I will say I did get some weird looks in 7th grade writing about venereal diseases.
You think? But yeah, I mean, Semmelweis and Lister and some, germ theory of disease. What, people just assume we always knew what we always know now. What we know now.
Medicine is a relatively new. Modern medicine is a relatively new sport. Right? We don't even have peer review. Peer review journals is really only 50 years old.
I disagree, Adrian. I don't think medicine's new. I think if, like you were saying a minute ago, you look back 5,000-10,000 years, it makes you wonder who the civilized culture were.
Yeah. I mean, modern medicine. The modern
Egyptians had nothing on it. Boy, we got nothing on them.
Oh, they put honey on everything.
But it works.
Very good. But it works. Yeah,
but it works.
Very good.
Just
we
don't
call
mix
them
it with heroin.
uncivilized. Yeah.
It's always a good life lesson. Always a good.
Yeah.
Adrian's not in the streets. Your autobiography is going to be epic.
Don't mix it with botulism laced. Don't put the botulism laced.
No, not under 1 year old. Honey is amazing for a lot of things. You're right. It's only in the last 50 years that we've actually had something that we could do for syphilis, heart attack, stroke, any of these things. Before that, it was,
Yeah. We're evolving. We're evolving, and we get to bring people into this conversation of critical thinking. Parked up a history class if it's gross, right? Well, maybe we're going to make that. Maybe I'll That's some ideas for some content. Maybe we should all take a topic.
Oh
and
my
make a
gosh,
video.
that would be so funny.
We should just do a
Gross
competition.
history.
Let's see who can make the grossest video and not get banned.
That can still remain up on YouTube.
That's a fine
Ready,
line right there.
set, go. For real. But I think it would be helpful too, because then it would show people the process of science. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people don't seem to, like, we don't talk about it very well. And so people don't understand that, like, science changes and we learn new things, because people always seem flabbergasted when people are like, oh, we have an update. They're like, you were lying. We're like, no,
Right,
that was just what we knew at the time. They're like, no, you lied. This is a conspiracy. I'm like, oh God.
And people don't often know. Like, I was on this chat on somebody's live and they were talking about electric vehicles. And I said, how do you think electricity is made? Like, do you not know it's made with coal and gas? You know, like, it's made by something, right? Or we could go hydrogen. And I was like, but read it, you know, check on history about the Hindenburg, right? Highly combustible. So we have to think, you know, we have to reverse engineer any great idea we have. How do we get to that point? And then also learn the history of what we learned and medicine and health and what we even know about the body, right? Because how many of us, we all went to school and we're like, there is this many organs, there is this many bones, and that's never going to change. And now what have we discovered? We've discovered there's a new bone or something up in our sinuses. That new organ. We've got this mesentery, right? So we are continuing to have a greater and deeper understanding of our own bodies, how our bodies work, science, medicine, all of that. So, you know, it's not static. So don't be so attached to, well, this is how something was, right? There could be something that is more efficient, and that's what it's all about.
And if you're a nurse for any length of time, what you learned when you graduated will change. And you're like, well, we used to do this, and now we do this. Even now, I just heard some comment about how cryotherapy, after a cardiac arrest, if someone survives, we put ice around them to try to lower their body temperature, thinking that it's neuroprotective. Not true. And even 6 years ago, I got in trouble for not doing that on a patient. So it changes even in one's career.
Must be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
We must.
Flexibility.
Open to new ideas, open to have your mind changed, you know,
and it's
all
great.
the good things.
It's great.
So says Scott.
I like growth. I like learning new things, and there's always new things to learn.
Absolutely.
So for me, it works.
Perfect. Well, thanks, friends, for being here. I thought this was fun. If you guys thought it was fun, let me know. And we can do it again, or we can go back to the old format. I kind of liked this one. I'm biased.
Love it.
But let me know what you guys think. Leave a like, comment, leave a like. Oh, wow. If you like the video, leave a like. It's free. And it tells the YouTube gods that you should like, that other people should watch it too. And it makes me happy. And then go follow all of these lovely humans. Their links will be down in the description below if they have social media that they would like to share, because they do these things just over on their own channels. And it's the bomb. Yes. Thanks for being here. I'm glad we ended on a higher note. I was worried there we were going to end on like syphilis.
Got a little dark there for a second.
Yeah. I was
I'm not gonna let you get away with
job.
that.
That's my job. We've got to let's pull it out of the darkness. We did great.
Let's throw a chainsaw in at the end of the
Exactly.
Oh,
I know. Yeah.
That'll
Yeah.
be fun.
Oh, yeah. We were really
Flawless
wavering there.
plan.
Oh no. It's just funny because I told Joe, my husband, I was like, he's like, do this live and make Chelsea and Chad react to it. And I was like, it's too much for the YouTube. I'm glad we went there anyway. I'm glad we went. We went there and it was fine. All right, friends. Well, if you like these types of things, make sure to do the likey, subscribey things, leave a comment. We'll be back next Friday, maybe doing more like this. If you have any topics you want us to cover, any articles you want a lot of opinions on, this is the email where they can be sent to, or where interesting things you encounter in the world can fall into and might be shared anonymously on the internet. Okay? Great. All right, friends. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Remember that you are not alone. You are more than enough, and you can do all the hard things. Bye, friends. If people could have their literal parts chainsawed apart, you can do anything. Okay? You can do anything.
Stop it.
You can do it.
You can do hard things. Leave it at that. You're not alone. You're enough. That's enough.
Oh.
Have a good one, all.